In a room illuminated by moonlight, a girl hugged a boy and asked him for a favor. All she wanted was for him to be hers, and no one else's at least once. The boy kept looking at her embarrassedly, not daring to utter a single word. They merged into a kiss, but the thought that he was the Duke's heir did not leave her. She was a simple commoner. It seemed to her that all this would be the last time, because when he graduated from the academy, he would have to leave her. She tried with all her might to build a wall between them, but the boy constantly wondered why she rejected him. He, through tears, promised that he would try to do everything possible so that she wouldn't even think about leaving him. A girl named Lien was very surprised by such an influx of feelings, and she didn't understand what she should do because the graduation would take place soon. They met when she entered the academy, but everyone around her didn't believe she could pass the extremely difficult exam, for which they considered her unworthy. Other students thought the girl was quite pretty, but everyone was united by the question of which club she had chosen. One of the students told the others that rumors generally spread quickly throughout the school, which meant that she had missed the application deadline. The other replied that it means she is not that smart if she managed to make such a mistake. A loud noise was heard behind them, causing one of their classmates to fall to the floor and scream loudly. The boy, in a trembling voice, said he would no longer run down the corridor, after which he asked for forgiveness. The one he collided with simply walked past, paying no attention to the pitiful cries. The stranger approached the schoolchildren, who had just been speaking unflatteringly about the transfer student. The boy approached her and sternly asked for the names of all the members of the trio. Heir Academy is named after its founder, and it was also the only educational institution in the Ragnara's empire for which social status did not matter, because aristocrats and commoners studied there, but passing an exam was necessary for admission. Its graduates became famous in various fields thanks to their talents, because special attention was paid to the place where students could express themselves. So every student must join one of the existing clubs. Lien brilliantly passed the transfer exam and became the focus of attention for the entire academy. Despite her background, she achieved impressive results, and her beauty made the hearts of many students pound. So she became the main subject of rumors. Standing in front of a board with signs of various clubs, the girl complained that making this decision was very difficult for her. She couldn't believe she still hadn't managed to make friends with anyone, and yesterday was the deadline for submitting applications to join the club. She thought that club activities greatly affect grades, so she simply could not avoid joining. Released from the stand, Lien looked around with a condemned expression and decided to trust her fate. As she walked down the corridor, the girl decided that at that moment she needed fresh air. Upon entering the courtyard, the new student saw how well everyone communicated with their friends. She understood that everyone had known each other since elementary school, and she had missed 5 years. So now she couldn't join the team. As she wondered if she could make friends with anyone, someone suddenly called her. Surprised, Lien screamed and fell to the ground, after which she turned to the approaching stranger. The boy apologized, and then asked if she was the one he had been looking for so long throughout the academy. The girl looked at him condemningly, and the question arose in her head where he had come from so unnoticed. To his question if she was Lien, the girl confidently replied that she was not, which greatly puzzled the boy. Realizing that he was mistaken, the boy began to say that he had confused her with Lien because of her hair and dark eyes. Starting to move in the opposite direction, the stranger heard her question about why he was looking for Lien, after which he said that something had happened. Getting up from the floor, the girl thought it was completely stupid because there was a name on her badge. Once they recovered from the shock, they finally realized that someone was looking for her, and they sent the guy who scared her after her. He reasoned aloud that he didn't know anyone who might need her. Returning to the academy walls, the new student recounted that she went out for some fresh air. She met a strange boy, but never found the club. All this time, a pink-haired boy followed her and listened to her reasoning that mountain climbing is one thing, but trying all sorts of unpleasant things is a bit different. He abruptly interrupted her calm monologue and offered to join her club, which currently consisted of 2 people. Lien turned around and saw developing pale pink wavy hair. These were also bright, clear eyes. The boy pulled out the application form and told her she could put her name on it. And meanwhile, she wondered if he was really a person. The girl was blinded by his beauty and only thought about where such a handsome boy in the academy came from. Meanwhile, the stranger approached and asked if she had joined anywhere. And then again, offered to join his club. Lien thought she had been seeing strange people all day, but she said out loud that the application deadline for the clubs had already expired. The boy looked at her surprised, but did not return the application form. After listening to her attentively, he smiled sweetly and said that the club meeting would take place tomorrow. He moved closer and said that the deadline for applications was today, so she would be on time. Realizing that she was not listening to him at all, the stranger continued to ask her to sign. Lien continued to move away in another direction, but suddenly felt someone grab her sleeve. Turning around, she saw eyes full of misunderstandings, and then the boy asked her why she was leaving. She reminded him that the deadline for applying to clubs expired yesterday, to which he replied that this rule applied to existing clubs, and that she just needed to write her name in the box, after which they would form a new club. Lien decided that she should think carefully, because maybe going straight would be easier than choosing randomly. Looking at the stranger again, she thought that, after all, he was a school celebrity, so if she associated with him, fatigue would be her eternal companion. The girl decided that she just wanted to finish the academy in peace, so she refused him. The stranger said that they needed at least 3 participants, and there were only 2, including himself, so she should help them. Confused, she started stuttering and could not realize in time what he wanted from her. In a state of passion, and also fascinated by the boy's appearance, Lien signed the form. She couldn't believe she could succumb to such a sweet face, and the boy, meanwhile, said he was very grateful for the help, and also reminded her of tomorrow's meeting. Left alone, the boy spoke out loud that he couldn't believe it was so difficult to organize a club. The boy's name was Karshan, and creating a new club was not a difficult task for him. He was simply bothered by the admirers who followed him from club to club, so he decided to found his own. The rumor spread widely among the students that he wanted to open his own club. It was about Karshan and Fjord, the best students in the academy, and participating in the same club with them could make her school years much easier. Fjord was constantly bothered by the fact that his friend didn't like absolutely anyone, so the problem for them was finding a third person to create their own club. Carson found out the unpleasant details of opening the club, so he had to conduct a search. After which, he learned about a transfer student with excellent grades who hadn't joined anywhere yet. After receiving the coveted signature, the boy returned to his friend and said that he managed to convince her using his charm. Karshan thought that there was still no one who didn't show the slightest interest in him, so when she refused, he panicked and his true personality began to show. He then asked bewilderedly if the new student really had such bad eyesight. The boy asked rhetorically, how could she refuse if he has such a beautiful face? The first day arrived at the club where Karshan, irritated, asked her about her vision. Lien calmly replied that her vision fully met all standards. During this time, she managed to learn something about the members of the new club and, in particular, their names. She also learned that the club director only seemed kind when he asked her to join them. But in reality, his terrible character was legendary. Many said that during sword training, Carson attacked a person with magic without a doubt. But even if the boy was just pretending for her to join them, he still didn't look like an aggressive person. The girl thought he looked more like a complainer than a bad guy. Her thoughts were interrupted by another member of the new club, who immediately introduced himself. The boy asked her if he could call her by her first name without using any title. Lien replied affirmatively. He also greeted her and then said she looked very handsome. The girl was still interested in the question of what the theme of their club was, because she still didn't know what they would do. The boy replied at lightning speed that they were just planning to relax in this club. Carson explained that the club has no specific type of activity, so they can do whatever they want, because in any case, they will receive club points by destroying demons, which he himself will do, and she will simply appear on the lists. He added that Lien is only present in the club for numerical reasons, so she should keep quiet. Fjord thought that this was said too bluntly, and that such words could hurt a girl. Suddenly, the new student got up loudly from her seat and began to slowly approach Carson. Walking very close to him and placing her hand on his shoulder, she declared that he was truly the best. The boy quickly removed her hand from his shoulder, jumped off his chair, and stepped back a little. Blushing deeply, he shouted and asked why she was bothering him. Lien explained that she was just too worried and then apologized. Hearing her call him by his first name, Carson became even more worried and looked at her bewildered for a while. Looking away from her embarrassed, he told her not to call him by his name. The girl thought about what to call him then, if not by name, and then decided that at the moment. When he so smilingly invited her to his club, he was truly pretending. Lien decided not to argue with them anymore, turned sharply and headed towards the chairs. Seeing how she was arranging the chairs in a row, Fjord asked her what she was doing. The girl reminded him that the pink-haired one said this club could be a place to relax, which is what she plans to do. After finishing arranging the chairs, the new student explained that she was going to sleep on the chairs. As soon as she lay down on the bed she had made with her own hands, she immediately noticed Carson's gaze. She asked him if he really had something to tell her, to which he snorted in disgust, and he replied negatively. The girl kept looking at him, full of indignation and bewilderment, after which she took a deep breath. Tucking a strand of hair in her hand, she confidently stated that she thought he had something to say. The boy, angry, stated that he had no interest in her, but at the same time she was behaving very strangely. Hearing these words, Lien sighed, relaxed, and sank into the makeshift bed. Carson continued to watch her, trying to hide his interest in everything that was happening. Closing her eyes, she thought, but the flow of her thoughts was so strong that she could not bear it. Jumping up from his chair, the boy began to talk about what was bothering him, and the girl immediately realized that he was one of those people who could not contain his curiosity. She immediately decided to play a prank on him, so she made a gentle gesture with her index finger. Carson looked embarrassed again, but still approached her, after which he knelt down so she could whisper something in his ear. Upon hearing a short exhale in his ear, the boy staggered backward, after which he found himself lying on the floor. He shouted indignantly that she was completely crazy, and she thought his reaction was very strange. She immediately decided that he was very naive, and therefore easy to trick, so she smiled sweetly and offered to take pity on him. Carson ran up to her and covered her mouth with his hand, telling her to stop talking like that. He said sternly that if she continued like this, he would silence her for the rest of her time at the academy. Noticing the redness of his face, Lien decided to play with him a little more to reduce his indignation. The girl slowly passed the tip of her tongue between her fingers. Carson blushed even more, stepped away from her, and began to ask her in a trembling voice why she was doing this. Seeing the expected reaction on his face, Lien realized that she should not believe the rumors circulating about him. In her opinion, he was not a bad guy because she provoked him very easily. Carson quickly tried to move further away from her to regain his composure. The girl told him that his hand was salty as always, which meant he was a person like everyone else. She decided to have a little fun and added that she supposed his hand would be sweet. Such a statement completely unsettled Carson, so the boy could not say a word for some time. Lien watched his reaction with pleasure and thought about what she was already enjoying. She decided it was necessary to tease the boy more often so that he would understand who he was messing with. Fjord was observing everything that was happening and was still trying to understand what they were doing. Aiden Academy is based on the belief that everyone is equal before learning. For this reason, it is strictly forbidden to mention one's social status on the academy grounds. This is what Lien liked most when she was about to enter an educational institution. Now she found a new sofa in the club room, and to her question about what it was, Carson replied that if she didn't know, it was called a sofa. The girl was interested to know why it had the symbol of the Duke of Lien, and although she knew that the rules were not completely followed, it was a clear flaunting of social status. The boy interrupted her thoughts and said that it would be much more comfortable to lie down on the sofa than on hard chairs. Lien decided to tease him again and said that he told her this in a tone as if he cared that she was lying on hard chairs. He asked her if she would really continue to tease him, to which she replied that she was asking a very serious question. The boy said that since their first meeting, he still couldn't understand what was going on in her head. The new student thought he was very cute, so she wanted to see more of his different emotions. Suddenly her face changed, and she said she was very curious to know if she would find the answer to her question if she cracked his head in half. Lien felt no fear and asked him if he really wanted to try to do this. Realizing that his threat had not achieved its goal, he replied in the negative, and then he turned to the window. The girl thought his threat was very boring because if he had already started, who was supposed to continue the dialogue in the same direction? Sitting opposite him, Lien said that this time she preferred to read a book. The boy looked at her with disgust, and in the meantime, she asked him what was wrong. Carson moved aside a little and asked her why she was sitting opposite him. In response, she asked him where she should sit, because the sofa was his place only. The man tilted his head tiredly and explained that he had no idea that she cared about someone's property. Hearing these words, the girl immediately ran towards the sofa, shouting that how could he lie on it? She would gladly do it. Finding herself on the sofa, the new student spent some time trying to comprehend her unusual sensations. She realized that she felt as if she were on a cloud, because the sofa was just as soft and comfortable. Lien didn't even try to hide her joy, so she smiled cheerfully and stroked the sofa with admiration. Turning to the table, she noticed that the boy was laughing uncontrollably, and then asked him why he was having so much fun. Karshan replied by timidly asking her if she liked the new piece of decoration in the club office. She turned around and, trying to look indifferent, said that he could sit on it. The boy explained that this time his head would remain intact because he could read her thoughts on her face. Lien thought that her facial muscles had completely relaxed, so she should eat a protein-rich herbal meal in the evening. She heard a short click of his fingers, after which a soft blanket appeared on her legs. She asked him why he was so kind to her that he even conjured a blanket and invited her to go to bed. The girl asked him if he really liked the way she breathed in his ear. She decided that phrase was not enough and added that perhaps he liked her language. Lien immediately saw the much-anticipated reaction and realized that steam would soon come out of him. So she could stop there. Covered with a soft blanket, she decided that he was really cute and nothing like they described. She thought the boy reminded her very much of a big pink kitten. To her, he was like a cat who was wary of strangers around him. The new student smiled smugly and suggested that she finally understood him. Breaking the silence, she said she would like to apologize for not understanding everything right away. When he asked what they were talking about, the girl explained that she had heard all sorts of rumors, and then suggested that she couldn't kill a person before entering the academy. In the end, it turned out that she had jumped to conclusions. After her words, all the rumors about Karshan came to nothing, as if someone had specifically worked on it. Waking up the next day, Lien realized that she had fallen asleep again, and then she decided that this was the most wonderful adaptation period of her life. Suddenly, the door opened slightly. She quickly looked at those entering and thought about who might have come. Karshan and Fjord were at the door, asking their friend why he wasn't coming in. Seeing the sleeping girl behind the door, his friend immediately understood everything, and Karshan hissed at him. Fjord asked what had happened to him lately for him to behave so strangely. Noticing Karshan's angry look, he asked if this new student was really bothering him that much. The boy was not going to answer the questions, but his friend did not stop and asked him why he cared so much about her. Unable to bear it, Karshan replied that he was very mistaken, because he was treating her this way only because she had recently been transferred to the academy. When his friend asked how long the adaptation period would take, he replied that they planned to treat her like this for only a week. He added that during this time, he would simply be careful with her so that she wouldn't run away from them. Meanwhile, the girl they were talking about pretended to be asleep, but she didn't miss their conversation. She thought that he was just very worried that she might wake up, so he didn't intend to enter. As he walked past her, he noticed her bare legs, after which he decided to cover them with a blanket so she wouldn't freeze. Lien decided that she could not leave things like that, so she immediately got up from her seat and looked him intently in the eyes. Smiling mischievously, she asked him why he had decided to cover her legs. The boy immediately tried to justify himself, saying that she misunderstood everything and assumed that she had undergone surgery to remove her angel wings. To his question about what she was wearing, the girl replied that it was an angel kit. Fjord decided that she just liked to tease him, and Lien said that she was just joking. But in her opinion, he really treated her well. Confused, Karshan walked angrily to the table, telling her to keep sleeping. But the new student found herself thinking that she couldn't stop, because she really liked his reaction. Stretching relaxed on the sofa, she explained that she woke up in a very good mood, so she decided to read a book. Turning to Fjord, she noticed that he was also reading a book. Lien had heard a lot about Karshan, but knew practically nothing about Fjord. The boy was second in popularity after Karshan, and both were in their senior year. She knew that he always seemed friendly and smiling, but at the same time, there was some kind of secret about him. Lien never noticed any flaws in him, so she decided to try to tease him as well. Approaching his desk, she asked him what he was reading, to which he replied that he was repeating material that had not been covered. The girl noticed that, contrary to all expectations, he answered with complete honesty. While he didn't understand what she wanted from him, the new student, meanwhile, took off his shoe and threw it into the farthest corner of the room. Finding itself between the closet and the vase, the girl decided that she had managed to score an imaginary goal. She remembered when her parents teased her in a million different ways. She remembered them because it was fun. Lien quickly apologized to him and told him she would immediately return the shoe, to which he pointed out that he does it when he is bored. Fjord asked her if she was really going to throw it out the window, to which she replied that she did not have such a spoiled character. Carson, sitting at a separate table, watched everything happening with indignation. The girl quickly brought the shoe, after which she asked if the golden-haired prince of the academy had lost the shoe, to which the boy replied that he was very cheerful and carefree. Kneeling on one knee, the girl offered to put the shoe back on his foot as a sign of reconciliation. Carson suddenly jumped up, interrupting their sweet and casual conversation. Lien looked at him intently and asked him if it really bothered him. The boy tensely asked if his new student really had no pride. She fearfully asked him why he had decided that, because she hadn't done anything wrong. Carson explained that she knelt very easily, after which he ordered her to get off the floor immediately. The new student thought it was just a joke and knelt down to apologize for her teasing. She couldn't believe he got so angry over something so trivial. After the meeting in the club, Carson and Fjord headed down the academy hallway, where their friends spoke about there being no adaptation period. He managed to stop Carson with the phrase that he was forcing him to go to the secretary. Fjord kept asking what he had in mind and why this girl had power over him. At the last question, the boy turned and angrily looked at his friend, which made him shut up. Fjord didn't understand what was going on, so he simply stopped a couple of meters away from him. The boy took a deep breath and said that he understood everything, because no matter what he said, because the girl would leave them anyway. Several weeks had passed since she joined the club, and now he thought that when she was first transferred to the academy, she didn't even imagine that everything would turn out like this. She felt very good deep down and suggested that she didn't even think she would have so much fun. There was still one problem left, which was the main difficulty of being at the academy. Communication with Carson and Fjord, the most influential people in the academy, caused the spread of numerous rumors. In a closed political space like the academy, in a kind of secular world, Lien was extremely careful and even hid when going to the club room. But outside the club walls, she was found by classmates who considered her unworthy of being close to Carson and Fjord. One of them said that, as expected, her face was too cute, and the other said she had nothing more than a pretty face. Another said that all this was rumors, because no one in their right mind would accept such a miserable woman into their home. The girl pointed her finger at her and said that she had never been close to Carson and Fjord, and that she never would be. Lien decided that at the first meeting, it immediately became clear why this was allowed. The girl was wearing an academy uniform which had no creases, and although it looked normal, it was clearly made of expensive fabrics and also had a famous master's brooch. But most importantly, in the eyes of these people, there was a feeling of superiority. Lien immediately realized that these children were aristocrats, so she dryly told them that. Unfortunately, the rumors were true. The girl screamed. Did she really not understand what she was talking about and really think that she could attract the attention of Carson and Fjord? She continued by saying that she should realize that the difference between them was greater than between the sky and the earth, even though she clung to them like an insect. The new student thought there had been some kind of misunderstanding, because if the girl had found out that Carson had approached her first, she would probably have slapped her. Lien quickly realized that this problem could not be solved so easily, but she wanted to try. With a sweet face, she replied gently that she was certainly no match for these two. She added that she didn't join the club because she wanted to get close to them, to which the girl replied that she would never believe such nonsense. She lamented for Lien and demanded to know how she could end up in their closed club. With a pen in hand, the new student explained that she joined because of their faces, because the whole academy recognized their beauty. She asked if they really wouldn't have joined their club if those two hadn't made such cute faces, to which one of the classmates replied affirmatively, for which she received a blow to the head. The girl did not give up and asked how she managed to monopolize all their attention. She angrily said that it was impossible to befriend aristocrats who influence society, trade, international relations, etc., and that no one would believe in such a friendship. Pointing her finger at her again, the girl asked if her enemy really believed in the academy's rules, because they didn't care about them at all. She added that she might have been deceived by Karshan's permission and Fjord's kindness. But in any case, they were not on her level. The girl came even closer and said that it was just a school memory, nothing more. And nothing less. Pointing at her shoulder with her finger, a classmate told her that she should know her place. Lien thought the girl was acting more childishly than she had imagined. The new student winked at them and said that she understood them. Then she asked them if they were on her level. This question greatly angered the bullying classmate, so she angrily asked what she meant. She suggested that the enemy didn't understand who she was talking to, and perhaps she hadn't heard of Countess Christia. And another classmate said that all the gold in the region was under the control of her family. And that was the whole difference between the worlds of commoners and aristocrats. The third began to say that she barely knew the name of Andrew's family because they were viscounts. The girl said that her enemy should have understood that they were all from influential families. So she should obey if she didn't want them to turn her house and everything around it into an open field. A classmate ordered her to kneel as a sign that she had really learned this moral lesson. Lien waved her pen and said they needed to clarify something, after which she listed all their names. The girl looked at her angrily again and asked what she was doing. The new student simply got up from her seat and walked past them, to which they again started asking if she had really forgotten. Because her memory is short, she also suggested that the enemy should bang her head against the floor, saying their names every night to remember. But suddenly, Lien quickly walked past her and struck a pose for a long-distance run. She was full of self-confidence and in her abilities, so she didn't notice what the people around her were trying to do. After counting a few seconds to herself, she started running in the opposite direction to the offenders. They tried to catch her for a long time, and Lien understood that this fool didn't even know how to run. The girl immediately ran to the teacher's lounge, where the magic pen replayed the entire dialogue. One of the teachers said he had heard enough, and this information greatly surprised him. He added that it was a good thing she had a recording device in her hands during the attack, because otherwise they might have gotten away with it. Lien thanked him and said she was very scared, but had to tell everything. She said she sincerely believes in the commandments established by the Academy's founder, and that the Academy rules must be sacred to all students. The teachers could not believe they had such a disinterested student, and meanwhile, she decided that everything turned out great for her. The new student thought that by emphasizing the rules as a model student, she would only highlight her disrespect for the Academy. In fact, she had expected something like this, because when she joined the club everyone was talking about, she naturally attracted more attention. This was not the most pleasant attention, but she still had no other choice. Approaching the club door, she tried to calm down, thinking that everything was fine, because she was already used to this. Upon reaching the door, she fell under the weight of her thoughts, because she believed no one else would dare to touch her. Because she was protected in the academy, she felt completely uncomfortable, but tried to get up so she could enter the room where she could be alone. Upon entering, Lien first wrapped herself in a blanket and decided to calm down a bit, after which she would get up. Wrapping herself even tighter, she suddenly fell into a terrible dream that constantly tormented her. In her dream, she saw her father and mother, as well as herself, trying to wake them up and have a picnic with them like before. When she was 10 years old, disaster knocked on her door and her parents fell ill with an incurable disease. So she began to study medical botany to help them. The girl did not give up and repeated every day what she had learned, hoping someday to find the answer. Believing that she should not lose hope, while climbing the mountains in search of rare flowers, she thought she must constantly try to do her best. Every time she ran happily back home to try a new way to cure her parents. She firmly believed that her efforts would one day pay off, but she saw her parents only getting worse. The girl collected medicinal herbs in vain and pleaded with all her might in vain. All her hopes finally faded, and her parents left this world due to a terrible illness. After her parents' funeral, she locked herself in her room and didn't go anywhere. She didn't meet anyone or talk to anyone. A year of fighting despair passed unnoticed, but at some point, she realized that her hope was making her like this. Now she realized that she had done her best not to give up, but it hadn't gotten her anywhere, so she shouldn't have gotten her hopes up. So, she would really like to tell herself that she should have lived as if there were no hope for them, because despair alone was enough. Now it made no sense for her to bother, because Karshan and Fjord were aristocrats, and she was a commoner, because she didn't expect their relationship to last long, because that was reality. When she got out from under the blanket, she decided that she should not show her weaknesses to other people, because the people in the club were her friends only within the walls of the academy, where the meaning of statuses was erased. She understood that she wouldn't be able to be with them when they finished their studies, so there was no point in clinging to a relationship that was doomed to end. Lien realized that in the future, she would have to face all problems alone. The only reason she was able to settle into the academy was because she met them unexpectedly and joined the club. Trying to ward off unpleasant thoughts, the girl quickly shook her head and realized that an audio recording would not be enough. She suggested that outside help would be needed to carry out the punishment. Without thinking for long, she went in search of Fjord, whom she found in one of the academy hallways. She followed him and told him that she urgently needed to talk to him about something. The boy said he was a little busy, so he didn't have time to follow her instructions. Lien quickly ran to him and asked if he really thought she was one of his fans. Fjord finally saw the owner of the voice asking for help, so he decided to stop and listen to her. She explained that she hadn't come to him for consultation, but with a very specific request. That very night, Fjord relayed all her words to his friend, to which he replied that they would take care of this trio. Fjord assumed that the girl joined their club because she was impressed by his friend's beauty. Carson wondered if it was really true, because one could never tell from her what she was thinking or what she was feeling. He became embarrassed every time he thought that she actually liked his face. Therefore, even in the dark, he turned away so that Fjord could not see his embarrassment, to which he replied that if he was so concerned about it, then he would need to listen to the audio recording. The boy added that, anyway, rumors circulate in the academy which spread faster because they talk about expelling students. Fjord said that by the next day, absolutely everyone in the academy would know about it. Carson didn't listen to him at all. He just thought that the girl really liked his face. Sorting out his thoughts but still embarrassed, the boy said that when he first met her, who was not affected by his beauty, because she acted as if she wasn't interested in him at all. After which he asked him if it was true about the face. Fjord severely told him that he had no intention of discussing this topic with him. The boy asked if his friend could do something about his notorious blush, to which he replied that he was well aware of it, so he should shut up. Carson believed that she was deliberately mocking him and saying various things to him with an insolent face. Lien made him feel much better when he was near her. He understood that all this was for a reason, that everything was some kind of plan on her part. Next to her, his mood was constantly the best despite the various difficult circumstances in his life. The daily teasing hurt his pride and always caught him off guard. Lien had no fear of approaching him, although not entirely good rumors circulated around her. Questions about what she thought when she played with him constantly tormented him, what she felt when she saw him. Every day he wondered what she felt for him and why she wasn't afraid at all. Fjord interrupted his thoughts and said that it seemed he was attracted to her. Carson asked what he should do in this case, because he understood that his friend was completely right in his assumptions. The boy thought for a moment and continued looking at his very worried friend, and then said quietly that Lien would have to put up with his obsession. Carson couldn't understand at what point everything happened exactly in such a way that he lost his mind. He constantly wondered at what point he started to care so much about her. He supposed that everything happened on the first day, when she unceremoniously lay down on the makeshift sofa. That day, when he returned to the dormitory, he couldn't stop thinking about the way she was lying on the hard chairs, her messy appearance and barely covered legs, so he decided that this strange feeling inside him would disappear when he fixed everything, using space movement magic, which was considered a rather complex spell consuming a large amount of mana. He visited the mansion of Duke Lisiansky. An ordinary mage would be afraid to use it or would lose consciousness after moving. But fortunately, Carson, who has incredible magical talent, does not belong to the category of weak mages. The butler immediately came to his call and asked who dared to break into the young master's quarters. Upon seeing the future heir to the duchy, he began to ask him what he was doing here at such a late hour, to which the guy asked him to bring him a blanket. The butler immediately bowed and said that he would immediately bring him what he needed. He decided not to argue with him without reason and said that he should do it as quickly as possible, after which the man rushed out of the room. The butler was thinking that he didn't immediately realize what exactly the young master wanted, so he should hurry up. Suddenly, it occurred to him that the blanket was meant for someone else and not the knight himself. The man decided that Carson needed a cloth to cover the body, after which he decided to inform the Duke so that he could take care of the corpse. Meanwhile, Karshan carefully examined his room and noticed a large sofa, and luxurious. Deciding this would be more than enough for her to sleep soundly, he began to cast a movement spell. Only high-ranking mages can use space magic, and depending on a person's abilities, small or large objects can be stored there. Karshan was the genius who used this type of magic to deliver the sofa to the academy. That day, he worried whether she would use it if he brought a sofa to the academy. He imagined her sitting on it and being happy, but he was still worried if she would like that gift. The boy thought this would be much better than setting up chairs and lying on them. And besides, the sofa was made by a skilled craftsman, so she should be very comfortable. The Duchess's heir assumed that if she covered herself with a blanket, she could take a nap under the warm sun rays. The boy, embarrassed, thought that she might smile at him again in gratitude for the provided sleeping place. Realizing that she wasn't thinking about this at all, he decided that it wasn't him she should like, but the sofa with a blanket, because it irritated him too much. It seemed to him that if she got comfortable, she would finally stop thinking about him. He supposed that if this problem was solved in time, he would stop worrying and fretting. He hoped she would be immensely grateful to him, which meant she would stop teasing him. Carson decided that if he didn't pay attention to her, everything would go away on its own. Now he couldn't understand why she kept getting on his nerves. His heart pounded hard in his chest, and he had absolutely no control over it, which irritated him enormously. The girl continued to fill all the space around him, despite his attempt to get rid of her attention. Every day for the whole week, at some point she decided she needed to tease him. Lien repeated the same sigh in his ear, which greatly embarrassed the Duke's heir. One day, she suddenly got up and asked him to stop doing this to her, to which she asked what he meant. After which she apologized and said she wouldn't do that again, because she didn't even imagine that he didn't like it. Seeing how embarrassed he was, she continued to apologize to him for a long time. At that moment, he couldn't push her away, but only after a while did he understand why everything was happening this way. At that moment, he said that every day she was teased, so he also decided to tease her by feigning embarrassment. In the women's dormitory, Lien had just woken up and realized she had another nightmare. She didn't know if there was any point in trying to cheer herself up or if she should just be sad. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and she thought it might be the person delivering the alms. She really wanted to pretend she wasn't in the room, but the knocking didn't stop. Gathering strength, she got out of bed and walked gently to the door. With sleepy eyes, the girl tried to figure out who was in front of her, after which she saw a familiar silhouette. Behind the door was none other than the Duke's heir Karshan, who was her mysterious guest. Realizing she was standing only in a nightgown, Lien tried to quickly close the door in front of her. She held the door tightly with her hands so that an unexpected guest couldn't get in. The girl tried to understand if she really was no longer in her room, but in the men's dormitory. Deciding it was her imagination, the new student opened the door a little, hoping not to see anyone there. The boy was still standing outside the door, waiting for her to let him in. But instead, the girl closed the door again. Covering her face with her hand, Lien tried to finally wake up completely so she could start thinking normally. She was embarrassed that Karshan called her by name, because this had never happened before. Opening the door a third time, she asked if something had happened, to which the boy became embarrassed. Lien tried to understand why he was silent, why it was a simple question, and also why he was so nervous. Realizing that he was still a real celebrity, and that if they were seen together, there would be a lot of trouble. She quickly grabbed him by the sleeve and led him into her room. Closing the door behind him, the girl surprised the uninvited guest even more, who could no longer explain what was happening. Suddenly, he realized that he was right in Lien's room. The girl started asking why he had come so suddenly, if they really had big problems. The boy, in a very low and embarrassed voice, asked her why she kept holding his hand. Lien abruptly let go of his trembling hand and explained that she was probably in a hurry to touch him, because apparently he didn't like it. Karshan answered negatively, after which the girl examined him even more closely. Moving away from her gaze, he said that he didn't like her touching him or calling him by his name. The new student suddenly began to understand everything and realized that, after all, he was a very nice guy. The boy told her that she could call him Kaon instead of pink-haired one. In Lien's imagination, Carson suddenly turned into a cat that was taken by surprise. She was very surprised because they had only recently met, so he couldn't have liked her in such a short time. The girl thought that he didn't like her teasing him at all, But it turned out to be the complete opposite. He always wanted to be friends with her. Lien didn't understand how someone couldn't like such a handsome and kind-hearted boy. This wasn't the first time she had experienced something like this. So if he wanted to be closer to her than just a friend, then she would have to keep him at a distance, because any expectation only leaves scars. The girl smiled sweetly at him and said that she really liked his shortened name. His heart skipped a beat at those words, and he wanted to record her voice and listen to it every day. Lien saw how much he blushed, so she immediately addressed him using the name Kaon. Karshan couldn't believe she said it so easily and decided to tease him again, saying that it was very awkward to call him without his full name. Moving closer, she repeated the abbreviated name again and continued to watch his reaction. She gently touched his cheek and asked in a soft voice if those words had spoiled his mood. Forgive looked at her, not believing that this was really happening to him. Looking directly into her eyes, Karshan saw her eyes red from tears. So his gaze changed. Lien noticed this change in his face, but had no idea why it happened. The boy sternly asked her if she had been crying all night and if her eyes were still very red. She looked like a ghost, watching him from somewhere far away, but still, she answered negatively. Khan irritably asked if it was really because of those who offended her, to which she replied that there was nothing to worry about, because if she kept making faces, her face would become ugly. Karshan only heard the word ugly, and meanwhile he thought that, no matter what she did, she would still be beautiful. The embarrassed boy told her that he would take care of everything, so she shouldn't worry or cry. This statement took Liam by surprise, so she didn't answer him for a long time, but just looked at him. He was very worried about her, but she still didn't want to change her mind. At the same time, in the club room, Fjord remembered his dialogue with Lien, and she had a recording of a dialogue. Handing him the magic pen, she explained that the original was left in the teacher's lounge, and that this was just a copy. He quickly realized what she was trying to achieve, so he said that couldn't be. She asked him to use the copy so that the rumors would spread throughout the academy. Fjord was very pleased with how smart their new club member was. The boy understood that there was obvious status discrimination in the recording. Even though this was forbidden, there were already enough dissatisfied students, so they should have addressed this issue. He supposed that since the teachers were aware of what was going on, expulsion was just a matter of time. In her opinion, although Lien had recently entered the academy, she already knew its laws well. But this was still not enough. Fjord knew that the girl was very smart and supposed that a simple girl could disappear without a trace. Now this cannot be a problem for her, because she has become the object of Karshan's attention. Rumors spread very quickly throughout the academy, so now everyone was discussing that the 3 aristocrats who bothered the commoner were actually expelled. Many were interested in what was happening at the academy. One of the students said that it seemed as if she had been personally expelled, and then added that it would take a lot of effort to get expelled from the academy. Someone reasoned that even the principal had a say, although he had never been involved in the academy's affairs before, which means the matter became too loud because they flagrantly violated the rules. Some have speculated that the trio's families collapsed overnight due to accidents related to their businesses. While the workers were out, an earthquake occurred, so all the mines collapsed, and the ship of one of the families got caught in an unknown storm and sank, and a strange fire surrounded the warehouses and destroyed all the goods stored for several years. Lien was also aware of this news, so now she was sitting alone in the club room. She understood that a terrible catastrophe had occurred, the fault for which was none other than her. From the simple expulsion of common students to the ruin of the entire family. But on the other hand, she no longer had to worry about the possible return of annoying offenders. There were rumors throughout the academy that if you contact her, problems will definitely arise. The girl was indignant because she no longer had friends, and now they stopped talking to her completely. Fjord noticed that she was always in the club room anyway, to which she replied that it was completely different. Lien noticed that everything in her life remained the same, because she didn't even communicate with her peers. She briefly thought about the fact that something had dramatically changed in her life. Karshan very often began to show her attention, and even this time he brought her a flower, saying that as soon as he saw it, he thought of her. The girl looked at him intently, still trying to understand why his attitude towards her had changed so dramatically. Lien reminded him that, of course, she was grateful that he was thinking of her, but that he shouldn't have picked the flowers to show them to her. Noticing the indignation on his face, she added that since he had already picked it, he needed to put it in a vase. and if he changed the water periodically, it would last much longer. Kaon immediately cheered up and happily announced that he would immediately bring the necessary item. He immediately started casting teleportation magic, to which Lien asked him why he was casting spells if he could ask for a vase. The Duke's heiress remembered that she had plenty of mana, and meanwhile, she thought that now she was trying to find something that could not be bought with money. The girl realized that since their last meeting, the boy had become more open and kind to her. No matter what she says to him, he always smiles and tries to please her, which is why he has already brought her 5 colored blankets. Every time Lien received a new item, she was sincerely happy about the gift, because she really liked them. She reasoned that he was at that age when any person of the opposite sex was a pleasure. Lien didn't want to scold him at all for picking the flowers, and she also hoped that they would remain friends for as long as possible. Leaning back on the sofa, she wondered if her friends would be friends if she left them. Fjord asked her if she really considered him her friend, even though he didn't even give her flowers, to which she answered affirmatively. Karshan, upon hearing those words, once again turned into a cute, angry cat. He stated that he had known her longer than Fjord, which meant he was much closer, but she reminded him that they had all met on the same day. The girl asked him if there was really any difference, to which he replied embarrassedly that for him it was a very big difference. Kneeling in front of her, the boy asked her which of them is more important to her. She knew that if she answered this question, she would immediately be in big trouble, so she replied that it wouldn't matter who she chose. Upon hearing her answer, Kaon became even more embarrassed again and frantically asked if this was really the case. Lien quickly tried to correct the situation, saying she was only joking, to which he commented, damned, that there was nothing funny about it. The girl thought he was taking her words too seriously, but she still found him very kind, and then said that both were very dear to her. The Duke's heir's face twisted into a terrible grimace of indignation, and he again looked like an unfortunate kid. The boy showed with his entire appearance that he was completely displeased with her answer. He kept repeating her words that he was just a friend, and meanwhile, she asked him if he really wanted something more. Kaon immediately panicked and became embarrassed, shouting that he couldn't even think of becoming anything more than friends with her, or that he would ever want to marry her. Lien reasoned that she had time to think about marriage in such a short time. Deciding to calm him down, she told him that they were the only ones she could call friends in the academy. Looking at them happily, she added that she was absolutely satisfied with everything in their relationship. Karshan sadly asked if everything would really change if she had more friends. The girl couldn't understand why he had such an expression on his face, but definitely not everything was easy. After a while, she was walking down the hallway of the women's dormitory and thought that perhaps the Duke's heir didn't realize that his main job was to scare away the people who wanted to befriend her. She couldn't help but think that it would be great to make friends through books. Opening her eyes, she recently noticed a pile of boxes in front of her, which she was about to crash into. The girl held out her hands in time and said they were about to collide with each other. The student carrying the boxes exclaimed happily that this was exactly what she was looking for. The stranger said that Lien is much kinder than they say at her academy. The girl turned out to be Jane, Lien's new roommate, as she had returned both from the academy due to family leave. She was 2 years older than her, but also in her final year of studies, so the girls ended up in the same class. Once in their room, Lien said it was very nice to meet you. Jay explained, a little embarrassed and confused, that she recognized her name when she looked at the sign on the room. Lien suggested that she speak to her privately and not so formally, because she was used to speaking like that with all her friends, to which the new neighbor said that would be too presumptuous. She added that then she would have to contact her officially, which greatly confused her new partner. Lien extended her hand to her and said that they would now live in the same room, so they should be as comfortable as possible. Jane confirmed her words and suggested that it would indeed be much better. Lien had a very good feeling about her new roommate and also her new friend Jane. The next day, the girl suddenly woke up from the sunlight and mentioned that she usually gets up after 12 on weekends. Jane apologized for accidentally waking her up and then carefully examined her still sleeping neighbor. As soon as the girl turned towards her, Lien noticed that she was already getting ready to go somewhere. Jane told her that she had some kind of plan, but her neighbor kept looking at her thoughtfully. Waking up from her thoughts, Lien loudly declared that she almost left her speechless. She asked if she was really going to collect debts, to which the neighbor replied that in that case, she would not have recognized her. But actually, she was in a hurry at the academy and had little time to buy something. So she wanted to go shopping. Stretching, Lien said monosyllabically that she understood everything, but thought that the girl had really arrived unexpectedly. Jane, without thinking twice, turned to her and asked if she wanted to go with her. She started walking with Lien and talking about the fact that she usually doesn't go shopping because she usually sleeps until lunch. After which the girl agreed to go with her. The market, as always, was crowded because people started the day by shopping. Jane had to drag Lien halfway with her, as the girl was not yet fully awake. But as soon as they reached the shopping area, the girl immediately came to life and said she was very excited to walk down a busy street. She thanked her new neighbor and told her that sometimes it's nice to just go for a walk. The girl shyly said there was nothing to thank her for and that, in general, she should be thanked. She suddenly raised her hands and shouted at the top of her lungs that they absolutely had to buy everything. No matter what Jane said, they still carefully selected things before buying them. They made decisions carefully, whether it was a beautiful patterned scarf, a cute table lamp, or a beautiful glass bottle that could be placed on the table. Lien understood that if she walked alone, she wouldn't pay attention to anything, but this was a shopping trip with a friend. Suddenly, she noticed that many people in the city were buying a certain cookie. Jane asked if she would really buy one for herself, to which she replied that she had no intention of doing so. But then she thought maybe her new friend had a sweet tooth. She offered to go ahead and buy some, but for some reason, all the cookies were shaped like hearts. In fact, she didn't notice the many signs telling her to give the cookies to the person she liked the most. Seeing her choosing different flavors of cookies, her new neighbor couldn't help but think she looked a lot like a cute kitten. Once they picked up the cookies, Jane asked if her neighbor had an ideal type of guy, to which she replied that she simply liked good guys. The girl asked her in horror if he could really be kind, to which Lien replied that he couldn't, but that he must be kind. Addressing her neighbor, she added that otherwise, she would simply ignore him. Deciding to continue the conversation, Lien also asked her the same question, to which the girl said that the main thing for her was to find common ground. Suddenly, Jane asked her if there was any good guy in her circle with whom she was close. She explained that maybe it was a club friend, because there was someone popular there. Lien said that Fjord is a good guy, and then noticed a strange expression on Jane's face. She was very surprised by his strange behavior, but couldn't understand what the reason was. The girl started making excuses that her new friend had misunderstood everything, because to her, he was only a friend. The new neighbor stated in horror that since she also liked Fjord, she was very slutty. Realizing that the conversation had gone completely in the wrong direction, Lien decided it was better to go back and eat cookies. That same evening at the academy, Jane went to a meeting with her client to reveal all the information. The girl thought her neighbor was a good person and that she would be a good friend. Jane really hated herself for having to do this to her new friend. Suddenly, she saw a shadow in the hallway, and then she saw the man towards whom she had been walking for so long. The girl bowed to him and told him that, as she had already said, she had moved into the same room as her. She explained that in the future, she would also report all the facts that happened to her. Carson stood in the moonlight, listening intently to her story about Lien. Jane decided to clarify to him what actions of Lien she should warn her about. Kaon stated that she should ask fewer questions and simply do what they agreed on, to which she asked him if he really wanted to receive information about her interests. The girl suddenly realized that the boy was in a bad mood, so she decided to simply do her job. The next day in class, she was still thinking about the conversation from the night until Lien abruptly interrupted her. The neighbor asked her why she was frozen, to which Jane replied that 2 years had passed, and nothing had changed. The girl said that her new friend is more worried because she misses him a lot. Lien happily invited her to eat cookies together to cheer her up. Seeing the bewilderment on her face, she remembered that in the morning her neighbor Somalia had personally asked her to take the cookies they bought last night. Lien said that no matter what flavor she liked, it would end up in the bag anyway because she bought many cookies. Suddenly, Jane asked her to look around so she could finally understand what this cookie meant. Literally behind them, a girl was handing a bag of heart-shaped cookies to the object of her affection. And on the other side, the girl handed the same bag to the boy, telling him that she was the only one who would take care of him. Her new friend asked her if she really didn't know what holiday was being celebrated that day. After class, the teacher announced that due to annual attempts at poisoning with a love potion, the cookie festival was banned inside the academy. Lien suddenly realized that this was the reason why everyone was secretly exchanging gifts, avoiding the teacher's glances, but this was the first time she had heard anything like this. Jane couldn't believe she had bought cookies to share with her new friend, to which the girl replied that she thought she would like them. Seeing the embarrassed but cheerful face of her new neighbor, Lien noticed that her idea was a success. Jane tearfully begged her not to do this, because on Cookie Day, the girl should give them to the boy. A new friend offered to treat a boy she is friends with as a token of her sincere friendship. She offered to give cookies to someone from the club she attends. Lien said that this could have certain consequences because they are not such good friends. Having said that, the first person she thought of was Carcian, whose rumors spread faster than the wind. Jane decided to change the subject and asked her to choose earth-flavored tomato or tomato-flavored earth. Lien slowly continued her casual dialogue, but she herself understood that Kaon probably knew the answers to all the questions, so she should draw a line. As she said goodbye to her friend, she realized that her feelings were confused. Approaching the club room, the girl decided that she should only do what her friends did, although she was not sure how her heart felt. Trying to be strong, she slowly opened the door and was about to enter. A fire was burning inside the club room. There was a protective magic barrier around the sofa, and Fjord lay lifeless on the floor. Right behind him was an angry Carcian, and the beaten man himself said that he didn't understand at all where he had heard such information. Seeing her in the hallway, Kaon calmed down and Fjord asked her to explain everything, as his friend immediately attacked him as soon as he saw him in the room. Before he could finish speaking, the room door slammed shut, and the girl was left outside. From behind the door, magic flashed at lightning speed, illuminating the entire hallway with white light. The room door opened, and the cute Carcian appeared behind it, asking her what they would do today. The room behind him was complete again, so he asked if it was just an illusion, or if the room had been completely destroyed. The guy asked in surprise if he could really destroy the circular room or touch Fjord, and his half-dead friend weakly said that he didn't touch him, but used magic. The girl asked him in surprise if he was trying to be nice, to which he answered affirmatively. Lien happily declared that he should remain so kind for the rest of his life. Seeing the smile on his face, he blurred with emotion and exhaled calmly, realizing that she wasn't going to get angry with him. She was still in shock, but tried not to show it, and meanwhile the guy started thinking about what he should do. Lien thought it was unlikely that she could ignore what had happened, but being smart meant pretending to be stupid on time. As she walked into the hall, she reasoned that despite the teacher's warning, everyone was exchanging cookies. So suddenly, she revealed that she had no idea about this holiday. Hearing those words, he became very sad, and Lien thought he was even more disappointed than she expected. Trying to save the situation, she asked how many cookies they received, as they were very popular in the academy. Fjord said he received enough cookies, and Carcian was caught last year, so he no longer accepts them from other people. As soon as he said these words, he immediately noticed the evil look from his friend, who said he would regret these words. The girl said that everyone was secretly exchanging cookies, and then turned to the smiling Carcian. Fjord sincerely prayed for him to quickly give the cookies to Kaon, so that he would finally calm down, because for some reason, he decided that she liked him. Suddenly, Lien suggested that they spend the day without cookies, so as not to break the school rules. Her words greatly saddened the Duke's heir, who was still expecting cookies. She thought Kaon's eyes had darkened, but she didn't need to look at them. Covering her face with a blanket, the girl tried not to notice what was happening around her, so as not to deviate from the intended path. There were 2 other people in the room besides her, but for some reason it was too quiet. Lien decided to look around to understand the severity of the situation and opened one eye. In a corner near the sofa, a distraught Kaon was sitting, huddled like an offended kitten. This sweet image touched her heart, but she couldn't help it. She didn't understand how she could try to ignore him if he was being so kind to her. Her head ached from the onslaught of thoughts that she was offending him too much. Lien thought about the fact that she herself suggested a cookieless cookie day. Suddenly, Fjord approached her, pointing his finger to indicate there was something under the table. The girl didn't immediately realize what he was trying to explain to her, but then she turned her head towards the table. Peering under the table, she saw a bag of cookies that Carcian so desperately wanted. Fjord tried to explain to her in sign language that he would hand the bag over to Kaon, thus saving him from death. Fortunately, Lien immediately understood what he wanted, but she thought about the fact that earlier they seemed like close friends. She remembered with horror that just a while ago the guy was lying on the floor, practically unconscious. Therefore, now she could not refuse his plea to live in peace in this world. The girl sat in silence for a while and thought about what she should do in such a situation. Looking again at the sad Carson, she quickly threw her bag onto the sofa. And then she started looking for something in it. Taking out the cherished bag of cookies she had bought the day before from her bag, Lien headed towards the sad man. She handed the package to Kaon and told him he could take it himself in honor of their friendship. The guy didn't immediately understand what she had done, but still got up from the floor to be on equal footing with her. After a couple of moments, he realized that she was giving him cookies on Cookie Day, which meant that not all was lost. Seeing so much enthusiasm, she reminded him that the cookies were a sign of their friendship. The guy happily accepted the gift and then thanked her for the long-awaited present. Lien thought it was just a bag of cookies, but it brought him a lot of joy. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and Fjord immediately rushed to open it. The girl thought the guy was very popular, so someone came to him. Fjord returned and said that girls usually don't come to the club room when Carson is there, but sometimes they are very brave. The guy asked his friend to open the space where he kept all the cookies he received, saying that there is nothing good in all this, because then it is difficult to get rid of such a quantity. Lien asked, bewildered, if all that food would go straight to the trash. He explained that he couldn't eat it all alone, and besides, he didn't know what was inside, so he couldn't give it to anyone else. Because despite the rule, every year there are still victims of the love potion. The girl asked again, damn it, if he really threw away a mountain of cookies every time. Kaon happily declared that he only received cookies from her, and Fjord replied that he hadn't paid attention before. Suddenly, he realized that the girl was passing him cookies, but at the same time, his hands were shaking badly. Lien distracted them from blaming each other for the uneaten cookies. She handed him a bag of cookies that Fjord had prepared for Carson. After receiving the cookies as a gift, Fjord asked her why she decided to do this. The girl explained to him that since it was Cookie Day, he should also try some. Lien said she would go to the women's restroom for a while and that they could eat cookies for now. Fjord immediately felt Carson's evil gaze on her, so he tried with all his might to stop her. Closing the door behind her, she realized that he hadn't done anything wrong, but he still deserved that fate. When the door closed, a loud sound was heard again, and then a shockwave threw him to the ground. Getting up from the ground, Lien tried to understand what was happening inside, which even affected her outside. When a mage gets angry, his surge of magic can be like an explosion, so she quickly fled to the bedroom. A few days later, she walked down the hall and thought that for the holidays she learned about that day. It turned out quite well for her, but if Kaon's relationship with Fjord worsened, then she was ready to take matters into her own hands. George, the medical botany professor, announced that they would work in groups for this lesson. The man was very grumpy, but he was talented at teaching such difficult students. The professor gave a lot of information that was not in the textbooks and also practiced for a long time before becoming a teacher. But his subject was not very popular among students. Accidentally, she ended up in a group consisting of students with a large number of views. She wouldn't have had any problem with an individual assignment, but working in a group caused her resentment, since she didn't communicate with anyone. Lien decided that she needed to think positively, because that way she could make new friends. And one of her classmates said that if she had no one to do things with, then she could do it all by herself. A classmate sitting next to her turned to her and asked if she could ask her a question. Having received an affirmative answer, the girl asked if the rumor that Carson liked her was true. Lien answered negatively and added that there was absolutely no reason for it. The classmate kept staring at her and then snorted loudly. The girl exhaled deeply and stated that she had really gotten carried away by some rumors. Lien didn't understand what she wanted from her and why she was talking to her in such a strange tone. Upon seeing strange inscriptions stating that she would be the group leader on one participant's sheet, she suddenly felt a bad premonition. Carson had no reason to love her because they were of different social standings. The girl believed that, looked at objectively, he didn't like her that much. The guy had a beautiful appearance, background, and a kind and pure personality, so much so that even someone from the ruling family could not compare to him. Lien understood her situation very well, but she couldn't let someone look at her with such an evaluating gaze. She firmly decided that she couldn't just leave such a malicious statement to him. having decided to act according to the method of what is done to you, what you do to them. She said that she was very grateful to Miss Potato and hoped they could work as a team. Upon hearing that she had just been called a vegetable, the girl became very angry, but remained in shock for a while. Fully realizing what was happening, she jumped up and asked where she had found the potatoes. While Lien was explaining that, given the subject, the task should be carried out in a remote area, the classmate kept complaining about her, and another group member said that they agreed to go with her. Upon arriving at the club room, the girl began to lament how she could lead such a group, because she would ruin all her grades. Kaon asked what happened, to which she replied that her leg suddenly hurt. He immediately offered to give her a massage, but managed to stop talking in time because he realized what he was offering. The guy tried to justify himself by saying that he had no malicious intentions, because he was just worried about her. Lien explained that she didn't believe at all that he was a master at this, so she almost agreed. All their strange conversation was also watched by Fjord in the room, who was clearly not happy with what was happening. The girl laughed heartily and said that he had cheered her up, and then said that she had heard strange rumors about him. Kaon immediately changed his face and asked with interest what rumors were being discussed. Lien accidentally let slip that she heard the news that she liked him. The guy asked her if those rumors really disappointed her, to which she replied negatively. The girl thought that her only concern was that the possible outcome was also being discussed, but she would prefer the rumors that he liked her, because there were many girls like that. She could not tell him this directly because he might cry, because when she sees how sad he is, she remembers how he cried after his parents died, and this made her feel weak. Therefore, she announced that she hoped he would not have problems with marriage in the future because of these rumors, but she knew very well that it was a useless concern because he would meet a girl from a noble family. Kaon, calmly and gently, said that he was very happy that she was not upset, and that she shouldn't worry because he would still be with her. His ardent speech was interrupted by an unexpected guest, who said that he had come to look for Lien. Kaon looked angrily towards the open door, trying to figure out who was looking for his beloved. When he turned to the door, the Duke's heir was already by her side, about to let the uninvited guest in. Upon opening the door, he furiously asked who this person was who dared to interfere in the affairs of his club. Lien said the guest was scared because he opened the front door very quickly. Approaching, the girl asked him if he had come for a group assignment. Kaon again asked angrily what exactly brought him to them, to which the boy apologized for bothering him. He tried to reassure Karshan, telling him that he knew very well that he didn't like anyone else coming into the club room, but that he needed to talk to him. He immediately changed his face, smiled cheerfully, and declared that in that case he would not interfere with them. Lien asked the uninvited guest what happened, because they agreed to meet after the assigned time for club activities. The boy explained that he had a very bad headache, so it would be very difficult for him. The girl said that he should take the medicine, but that he wouldn't need to go with them, because the next day he would have to work with the collected herbs, but if he felt unwell, he wouldn't be able to do it. Still sensing a sinister aura emanating from the room, the intruder declared that since he had no further questions, he was leaving. The guy shuffled a few meters and then started running quickly down the hallway. Lien didn't even have time to answer him. She just watched silently as he fled from her. Suddenly, she realized that the boy simply left because he didn't want to work in the group. She lamented being too trusting because everything was very obvious. When Lien entered the room, Jane asked her if she wanted to take a walk around the city. The girl apologized and said she needed to finish a group lesson, so she took a few minutes to collect some tools. She sincerely hoped that Professor George would not teach group lessons twice. But in the meantime, her neighbor reported that she had received letters. Lien took 2 envelopes in her hands and sincerely thanked her for the service, after which she went to her desk. The girl quickly realized that one of them was sent by her aunt, but since family seals cannot be used to write to the academy, she used the others. She remembered her aunt, who was very kind to her, and who always answered her questions. Lien decided that she would definitely need to read the letter and write a reply later. The letters always had the same scent of lavender, which never changed. Realizing that her neighbor had put all the letters in a box, Jane wondered why she had never opened a single letter. The girl quietly closed the box with the letters, wondering how she should answer this question. She was silent for a while, rubbing her wrists, and then said that those letters were not worth reading. Then, she went to a remote place to collect herbs, still believing that working in a group was bad. The first group member was a patient who, very tactfully, moved away from her on the first day. Claiming headaches, the second group member was a talking potato, who was already 30 minutes late. The third group member, whose name she didn't remember, came of course, but left almost immediately. His excuse was that his grandmother's former lover had died, so he had to go to the funeral immediately. But she could remove his name from the group assignment. So she was left alone, and finally told the guy that he should really pass by, since we are talking about his grandfather's former lover. As she walked up the slope, Lien reasoned out loud that, although the weather was cloudy, she was walking alone and could figure it out herself. She always liked walking on the mountain path, because she and her mother used to dig for medicinal herbs in these mountains. But after her parents abandoned her, she stopped going because her aunt was worried about her. However, she brought her all the medicinal herbs Lien wanted, so she could concentrate on her studies. She knew that if she had entered their home when she was younger, she could have called them Mom and Dad, but now she regretted not being able to do it sooner, because they originally wanted to add her to the family register. But when they reached exactly halfway, everything ended abruptly, and she could never become a member of their family. The mountain path led her to a dangerous place, surrounded by a fence that had a huge hole in it. One of the reasons this assignment was done in a group was that most medicinal herbs use mana as a source of nutrients, and the place with the highest mana density was the habitat of monsters. Furthermore, herbs that grow in the wild were much more common, more effective than those cultivated by humans. To get the best plants, you have to go to dangerous places with a group. As she passed through the fence, Lien suddenly heard a strange sound, but then decided she was only imagining it. She realized that all this time she was being watched by a man standing on a branch of one of the trees. The girl really wanted to complete the group assignment and suddenly saw the Dao Tranto flower, which is very difficult to collect, and since it had no beneficial properties, it was often classified as a weed. Lien knew very well that this particular plant could be used as a remedy for sweating, because when she was little she managed to create it to invite away the smell of sweat from her father after training. Now she reasoned that luck had not failed her, as this medicinal plant could not be bought because there was no demand. But she could find a place where she could get it. Although she was excited, she kept looking, and besides, she was confident she was prepared for all eventualities. However, Lien lost sight of the huge and terrifying wild boar, which silently approached her from behind. She heard an unexpected cry, calling for them to be careful, after which the pig's head was cut off its body. The girl didn't have time to understand anything as Karshan squeezed her tightly against his chest so she wouldn't get hurt. The first thing she noticed was an absolutely clean smell, for which she was unprepared. There was a strange density to this smell that could not be easily eliminated. Lien understood that just one breath from Kaon spread warmth throughout her body. After a couple of moments, she finally realized what was happening, so she immediately started pushing him away from her. The girl asked him what he was doing in such a remote place, to which he also asked why she was wandering alone. She realized he was very worried, so he came to look for her and was now looking at her unbearably. Getting up from the ground, Lien explained that she was making preparations and that she herself was able to scare away the monster. She examined the corpse of the slain animal and stated that if he hadn't intervened, the boar wouldn't have attacked her. Karshan quickly got up and told her that she shouldn't look at him, after which he performed vanishing magic. He confidently said that she should only see the best, to which she asked what he meant. The boy immodestly explained that it was about his face, and she thought that sometimes he was too handsome, which she couldn't help but irritate him. Lien decided to tease him and walked up to him and asked if he really needed to look at her every day. The boy burst out at such a wave of tenderness and began to utter confused phrases about how he liked her when she was a student. Thunder struck, followed by rain, so the girl hid under the first standing tree, reasoning that she had managed to collect several medicinal plants before the rain started. She realized that she had been so busy that she hadn't noticed Carson, and then she lost sight of him completely. Just as she was suspicious of him, Kaon immediately appeared next to her using teleportation magic. Lien thought he was very similar to a fairy who appears when help is requested. The girl realized that the rain didn't bother her at all, and then she saw the dome surrounding them and thanked him for his help. Kaon held a beautiful flower in his hands and said that he was actually trying to find a flower that would remind her. But after climbing the whole mountain, he couldn't find the right one, so he just brought her a rose that would remind her. Of him, she didn't answer, but kept looking at him in amazement, so he asked her what she thought about it. Lien took the rose in her hands, smelled it, and stated that their smells were very similar, which is why she guessed with the flower. When she was a child, every time Lien and her mother, hand in hand, climbed the mountains, she would ask him the names of the animals, plants, and flowers that caught her attention. Every time her mother would answer calmly, without the slightest irritation, to any of her questions. Her mother said that pink roses meant passionate love, so Lien's father often gave them to her. Now she thought it was an exact memory from childhood, although she hadn't told anyone about it, so he couldn't have guessed it. The boy told her that it had stopped raining, so they could move on, to which she timidly agreed with him. Everyone in her group refused to do the assignment, so she went alone, and everything turned out well because Kaon protected her. Over the weekend, no one from the group contacted her, so she independently completed the work designed for 4 people. She perfectly remembered the same person who drew up the plan in which she became the group leader, and then he just ran away. The girl managed to intercept him and asked if his grandfather's former lover was her grandmother. He answered this question affirmatively, and in the meantime, she thought this was also a trick. The boy explained that he was in such a hurry that he couldn't explain it clearly, because his grandparents were divorced, so everything in his family was confusing. He apologized because the 2 of them had to do the work of 4, because someone else was sick and couldn't come. Lien said that she did all the work herself, so she only wrote her name there. She added that this chatterbox didn't say a word about not coming, even though she had been waiting for him for 40 minutes. The girl tried to hurt his conscience, telling him that he was the only one who showed up. But then he disappeared. The boy asked her why she had given Amila a new nickname, to which she replied that the girl talked too much. That's why she became a talking potato. A classmate named Han said that, although you couldn't tell him apart from her, he had a sense of humor. When she asked him if he didn't joke with his friends, he immediately remembered the blonde girl who was always by his side. She explained that her friend's name was Jane, and the boy immediately started talking about how he was a very handsome man. Han said that she laughs and smiles very cheerfully, so she immediately became his ideal. That's why he dreams of dating her. Lien didn't want to believe he could look at Jane, so she told him to get out of her sight. The assignment turned out not to be as difficult as she expected, so she managed to achieve good results even alone. It wasn't the best work she had done, but at least it was something. But unfortunately for her, the professor gave the work a satisfactory grade. The girl said she didn't understand at all why he graded her so harshly, to which the man replied that he would have given her a higher grade for the weed on the path. Lien stated that they had to collect and systematize medicinal herbs from magical places as part of their independent research, because that was why the assignment was group-based. The professor said he knew, but he resorted to external help, so the more he talked about the topic, the more convinced he became that he was not mistaken in his assessment. She knew that Karshan was in that place and did not help her at all in collecting the herbs. He also refused to move me with magic, and the herbs he collected had a powerful energy, so they were difficult to handle. The girl confidently stated that there was a misunderstanding, because no one helped her at all. The professor looked at her surprised and said that buttercups were indicated on the 3rd page. Lien confirmed that she mentioned this plant in her progress report. The man said that less than a week ago, the scientific community learned about the special properties of this plant, and he was sure that she couldn't know it, which means she couldn't have collected grass she had never seen before. He added that she also collected asphodels, horse chestnuts, and raspas, which requires practice to identify such medicinal herbs. The professor stated that they had never examined these plants in detail in class, hence the logical conclusion that she received help from someone. Lien was well aware that this was a failure, because she often didn't listen to the professor, because she already knew these topics very well, but she intended to only collect rare taxa and complex ones for the assignment, which was a fatal mistake. The girl understood that her opponent was Professor George, whom it was very difficult to convince, but she decided to tell him the whole truth. She knew that her knowledge of medicinal plants was much greater than that of her peers, and the reason she didn't want to demonstrate it in class was because she didn't want to answer the professor's questions and receive a pat on the back. Thanks to her knowledge, the path to graduate school and a master's degree was open to her, but even now these lab zombies entering, they were constantly near the professor's office. Deciding to be as brief as possible, Lien began to say that she didn't know that the properties of buttercups had only recently been discovered, but that she had known them since childhood, so she didn't even think the city didn't know. She said that she had collected other medicinal herbs on the mountain behind the school. In order to mark their locations as evidence, the girl decided that this was the shortest possible, so that he couldn't deduct the points she received. Lien still didn't suspect that buttercups had been used exclusively as an ornamental plant for many centuries. And you had to be an eccentric to start researching such a flower. And the professor, now watching her closely, was exactly that eccentric. The man stared at her and asked if she knew anything about the benefits of Shiger Japsho. He said that this is a medicinal plant that he uses to improve blood circulation and maintain tone. The girl added that abuse leads to the accumulation of toxins in the body and side effects, but she thought that it could also be used with other medicinal herbs to moisturize the skin. But due to the inability to eliminate toxins, the plant is rarely used. The professor at that moment thought that the student who almost got a perfect score on the entrance exam, in addition to constantly looking out the window in his subject, aroused his considerable interest. Now he understood that the reason for her careless attitude towards the subject was that she already knew everything. The man apologized to her for having misunderstood her, and Lien decided that he was the type of person who was willing to admit his mistake. The professor said he would change her grade to excellent because she had achieved a lot on her own. The girl sincerely thanked him and was about to leave, but he stopped her. George asked her if she would like to learn from him personally, and then smiled happily. Lien ran out the door at lightning speed, shouting that she didn't need this at all. The professor enthusiastically reviewed her work and laughed melodiously upon realizing that he had finally found the talent. From that moment on, Professor George began to constantly question her in class. After every lesson, Hans began to bother her by asking her to introduce him to Jane. The girl decided that life at the academy could even be considered successful, because everything had been quite calm lately. Every time Hans looked for her, and wondered what would happen if he accidentally arranged a meeting over the weekend. She only needed to say that this guy wasn't bad. Lien often couldn't stand it and lashed out at him, telling him he wanted too much. Everything that was happening was observed by Jane, who on more than one occasion witnessed scenes where her neighbor was scolding a boy she didn't know. During this time, Lien's quiet daily life was slowly coming to an end, because the informant Jane assumed she was scolding her boyfriend. Soon the inevitable exam period arrived, but the academy's curriculum was divided into general education and special subjects. Although special subjects made up half of the curriculum, this did not mean that the grades for general subjects did not carry weight. And besides, Hans kept bothering her with the same request. She asked him if he really had no say, or if that was a reason to approach her and ask him something, to which he replied that he didn't even know what kind of exam it would be because he wanted to talk about Jane. Lien said that right now, she would ask him a very important question that he must answer. The girl asked him what he would choose, tomato-flavored soil or earth-flavored tomatoes. The boy thought for a while and said he would choose tomato-flavored soil, after which she told him he was disqualified. His answer did not match Jane's, because she explained her answer by saying that for her it was enough that it tasted good. Jane came to meet her in her office and asked who was next to her, to which she replied that there was no one there. After difficult exams, her friend approached her again and asked how she did on her accounting exam, to which she replied that she did well. The roommate stated that she had no idea what they were going through. Jane reasoned that at least the professor decided they should start with accounting, so that they could now learn other subjects. Lien talked about how she was going to take extra classes during the holidays. She added that she was not at all disappointed with her grades. She would simply stay at the academy during the holidays and be bored when everyone left after the exam. A friend promised to send her letters so she wouldn't be bored, to which Lien said she was the best. After a while, the girls said goodbye and dispersed down different corridors, attending to their business. Lien thought about how Jane cheered her up every time she went to the club room, even though she only went there to sleep. Approaching the door, she overheard a strange dialogue about someone being late again. In response, they were told that Carson himself was late for the accounting exam. The girl suddenly felt a very strange magic, which sent a shiver down her entire body. Lien decided she should enter now, so she opened the door with her eyes closed and said she was sorry for being late. Kaon appeared right in front of her, who kindly greeted her right at the entrance. He stopped for a moment and asked why Fjord was on the roof. The boy explained that his friend was a little tired, so he decided to take a nap right there. On the roof, he added that he was just having a terrible dream, so she shouldn't worry about it. Bringing him down from the roof, Karshan asked him if he had slept well, to which Fjord quietly asked who was in the room. Karshan, annoyed, asked him if he had a good time under the roof, and if he had slept enough. Looking up, Fjord saw Lien in front of her, to which she said she had entered the room at just the right time. He asked her if she was also late for the meeting because of the exam, to which Lien replied that she was trying to get a passing grade. The boy advised her to retake the exam, and Kaon said everything was very easy. So he didn't even count the points, but she is very meticulous. Fjord tried to understand how cuteness relates to meticulousness. Lien wondered if everything was really easy, and Karshan cheerfully replied affirmatively to her question. The girl understood that the Duke's heir was a genius, because since childhood it was easier for him to teleport than to run. And this required not only extraordinary magical skills, but also a brilliant mind. Lien asked what Fjord's specialty was, to which he replied that he was into fencing. She assumed he might understand her, but the boy didn't answer that he was told that their papers would be graded in the exams. Even though he didn't write them, the girl suddenly realized that out of the three of them, she was the only one left in the dark and struggling with the exams. Her grades weren't bad, but lately she had been slacking off a lot because she had been observing them. She announced to them that from that day until the exam, which would take place in 2 weeks, she would not go to the club. Although she was not the best in the class, she still had a high average, but she failed her accounting exam, so she needed to save other subjects. Sitting in the library, she decided to start studying special subjects for which she had not yet received a grade. Karshan joined her, who only pretended to read while holding the book upside down. In response to her comment that he was holding the wrong book, the boy explained that he could even read that way. He said that mana is the energy that is the basis of all living things, but when the laws of nature are violated, this energy changes and a monster is born. The girl noticed that he was only looking at her and not at the book, and it was impossible to study like that. Kaon leaned closer to her and asked if her heart and mind were really worried. He offered to teach her everything she didn't know, but all she had to do was ask him. The boy spoke in a very loud voice, so she realized that he didn't care at all about what was around him. A lot of time had passed since that conversation about the rumors regarding their relationship, but every day more and more people believed it, so it seemed that someone was deliberately spreading them. She constantly feared that her parents would definitely want to meet her, because she was the girl who charmed their son. Carson immediately approached her and asked what she was thinking about, but Lien, meanwhile, thought that she was too worried about the exams and the rumors. So she faked a smile and said that after looking at his face, she forgot about everything. The boy was a little surprised by this statement, but quickly managed to regain his composure. He asked her if she liked his beauty, to which she replied affirmatively. The girl added that she was worried about some small things, but thanks to him, she completely forgot about them. At the same time, in the Lysiansky Duke's mansion, the butler told the Duchess the same rumor from the academy. The woman replied that her son was interested in the opposite sex and that it was very interesting. Sylvia said that she had guessed it, but had no idea what things were really like. After Lien told Karshan that she would not come to the club room until the end of the exams, he began to literally stalk her. He was very happy to be by her side absolutely always, without taking a step, without leaving her. She was a complete fool when she decided that she could hide from him in the girls' dormitory, because even this had not stopped him before. The girl stated that fortunately she did not run into anyone while going to her room, but that she doesn't live alone now and should apologize to her neighbor. The boy looked mysteriously at Jane, smiled at her, and quietly asked her for forgiveness. His neighbor was surprised by the unforeseen circumstances, and also by the fact that her boss could show such emotions. The girl squeaked embarrassed and said that she shouldn't have apologized to her at all. Lien immediately realized that her friend had no reason to be friendly with him, so she found this behavior strange, because they both used to be bad-tempered. Karshan didn't listen to her at all, he just had his head in the clouds, so the girl decided that she didn't care at all. Lien sighed deeply and said that there was nothing to be done, and then quickly grabbed him by the sleeve. She told him not to be silly, because they needed to go to the club room, and for that he had to use teleportation so they wouldn't notice. The boy said in a trembling voice that she was holding his shirt with her hand, to which she asked if it was really harder to move like this. Kaon replied negatively and looked at his neighbor Lien, who was sitting nearby. He reminded Lien that she herself had asked him once, but the girl still didn't understand what he was saying. Suddenly, Karshan reached out his hand to her hair and then squeezed her tightly against him. The girl suggested that this magic was too dangerous for ordinary people with little mana, which means that it required closer contact. Lien could feel how fast his heart was beating and imagined how embarrassed he was at that moment. He had a unique scent that she had never smelled on anyone else. It reminded her of the rose he had once brought her. The girl didn't notice how she was suffocating in his arms, and a couple of moments later, they found themselves in the club room, where Fjord was looking at them. The boy asked what they were doing next to him and why they appeared so unexpectedly. Hearing his voice, Lien immediately moved Carson away from her, thus trying to avoid unnecessary rumors. She explained that they needed to use the teleporter, so she had no idea that what was happening was so fast. Fjord said that if they want a kiss, they have to leave because he needs to study. He approached his friend, hit him with a book, and told him to come to his senses. Kaon sadly turned around and headed towards the exit of the club room. Lien asked what happened to him, to which Fjord replied that he had gone to take a cold shower, and that he shouldn't pretend they were just friends anymore. To his question of why he needed to take a cold shower at this moment, his friend hesitated a little with the answer. She didn't know how to explain to him that the boy was too nervous because he touched his love. She decided to rectify the situation and explain that her friend had simply spilled something, and that he was very clean. Suddenly, she remembered his words that he had nothing to teach, so she decided to ask what that meant. The girl explained that every time she was in the club room, all she did was constantly read books. Fjord explained that he also tries to keep his grades high, but because of Carson, a wrong impression was formed about him. Lien confirmed these words, said that she considered them geniuses, and then asked how things were going on campus. The boy explained that he was in the top 5, but that it wasn't such a good title. The girl understood that fencing was the most popular specialty at the academy. She said that he was good at pretending that he wasn't bragging at all, which meant he had better conversation skills than Kaon. To which he replied that the boy just needed to show character. Lien advised him to be careful if he didn't want to be misunderstood, because quite a few rumors were circulating. The boy happily commented that he would try to make sure they understood him correctly. Suddenly, he asked her if she really thought Carson was good, to which she replied that, although he was sometimes moody, deep down he was still a child. Fjord was very surprised by this answer, so he tried to imagine how his friend was going to deal with such a statement. Suddenly, Lin announced that she would sleep for a while, so he would have to wake her up in about 30 minutes. The boy looked at her surprised, watching how with every breath she fell deeper asleep. Only a few moments passed, and the girl was already fast asleep on his sofa. Fjord thought that Kaon was acting like an idiot, but for some reason Lin didn't notice. And what's more, she didn't even suspect it. The boy wondered if she was really as naive as he thought, or if it was a trick. He suggested that it wasn't just a matter of naivety, because at times she was tough, and at times soft, and she also surprised him with her intelligence. In his opinion, the girl was a very multifaceted person with her own character. He realized that the longer he spent time, the more he got to know her and the more often he thought about her character. The boy realized that this was the reason why his friend was so involved in this. It became clear to him why Karshan hides his character from her. After all, he just wants to impress, but at the same time he is very worried. Since the girl had a warm soul, Kaon is afraid to disappoint her if he shows his bad side, so he only shows her the good side. Fjord had no intention of blaming him, because he himself had done the same thing to her. Lien woke up and looked at him intently, and the boy realized that she noticed that he was watching her closely. He asked her if she was really awake, to which she replied that first she needed to study, and then go to bed. The boy thought that she had taken him by surprise, but he didn't do anything wrong. Fjord suddenly realized that her soul was very restless, but he couldn't figure out the reason for this state. He supposed that she couldn't notice his gaze, so she was simply surprised, because she didn't want to please him at all. He suddenly thought that he had to admit that the girl was quite attractive. The thing is, life taught Fjord not to fall in love with anyone around him. Moreover, he didn't want to fall in love with the one whom his friend loved so much at all. Meanwhile, Lien said she had almost fallen asleep, but she suddenly wondered why this creepy academy was giving out grades right before the holidays. She said this approach forces everyone to prepare diligently, so as not to waste the holidays by retaking tests. The girl added that she was very happy to have gotten a high score in the club activities and be able to concentrate on the exams. She thought that when she checked the result, she saw the club's name, so now it haunts her. But she understood that it wasn't worth asking Fjord. It turned out that the club she joined was called Figaten, a completely incomprehensible name. Lien supposed that if Mugaten was the mosquito torture club, then Figaten was Fjord's torture club. The boy, meanwhile, thought it was difficult to imagine what his thoughts were up to. But what was most dangerous was that he was starting to worry about everything concerning Lien. Deciding this was becoming a problem, Fjord stood up and stated that he wanted to dispel the false impression about himself. Lien asked, surprised, what led to this unexpected conversation. The boy explained that he is not as sweet and kind as she might have thought, because everything Carson says about him is an illusion and a falsehood, and soon she will face how different his behavior in public is from his usual one. He supposed this would be his way of finally drawing the line, so he added that he was only saying this for her information. To his surprise, she replied that she already knew everything perfectly, because he wasn't just an idiot. The girl explained that he has a completely different smile when he is in public. She added that it was as if he were wearing a mask, but he was more relaxed in the club, so she was happy to see that he could relax here. Fjord only thought that she would stop doing this, because he couldn't resist her smile. He looked down so as not to see her, because when she smiled, he started to expect more. The boy told her a story common to almost all noble families. The story was that a half-brother suddenly appeared and messed up all the cards. As a child, Fjord followed him everywhere in the hope of becoming a member of a new family. But his half-brother mistrusted him. As a result, he managed to remove his younger brother from nobility and send him to the academy. The boy made both of them happy and dined in a warm family atmosphere, but could only hold back his tears alone. At that very moment, he firmly decided that one day he would return to the place that was rightfully his. Fjord stated that his behavior at the academy was aimed at establishing connections, so he didn't need sincerity, because the only important thing was the result. This was his strength, the only thing he could do alone. Determined to take advantage of people, he accepted the contempt, so he was prepared for Lien to avoid him in the future. The girl listened to him attentively and said that it must have been very difficult. She explained that it is very tiring to constantly adapt to others because she knows that he has been through a lot. The boy asked her if he really bothered her, since he constantly uses people. Lien asked, surprised, why anyone should bother her, because her only friend was him. Fjord was completely disturbed by her words and realized that falling in love with her wouldn't be difficult. It was as natural as water flowing down a slope, and it was useless to resist. All he could say to her were words of thanks for the fact that she accepted him as he was. Realizing he could no longer stand her presence, he quickly left and announced that he had urgent matters to attend to. Left alone, Lien began to reason that Carson was very kind, because he even moved a soft sofa and a cozy blanket to the club room because he wanted to take care of her, because he knows very well that she likes to take a nap. She was interested in the question of why. If Fjord was bad, he wouldn't use the future Duke of Lien who was nearby. She supposed that most likely he considered Carson his true friend, even if neither of them realized it. Noticing a silhouette at the door, she realized that Kaon had arrived and decided to sleep instead of studying. The boy quietly approached her and told her that after the exams, the school holidays would begin. He added that he had no idea what he would do without her for so long. The girl pretended to be asleep, but she didn't think he would say it so easily, so she decided to keep pretending. Carson smoothed a strand of hair and told her that he went crazy on weekends. He sweetly said he hoped the school holidays would never come, and then wondered if there was some spell to slow down the passage of time. Lien held on with all her might, but at some point she couldn't stand it because friends can't do that. She lifted the blanket and announced that she would not go home during the holidays, but would stay at the academy, so that he could visit her when he really became unbearable. The boy looked at her bewildered, not understanding how she managed to wake up so quickly. The girl asked confidently if this would be enough for him or not. Carson shyly answered yes, and then suggested that they take a walk together in the city. He didn't have time to finish, because she suddenly covered his mouth with her hand. Lien didn't want him to ask her out at all, because this is definitely not how friends spend time together. Meanwhile, Fjord stood by the window and replayed the dialogue that had recently occurred in his head. The boy clearly remembered that Lien calmly called him her good friend. Taking a deep breath, he said that he had completely lost now, although he hadn't even tried to win. He was curious whether she would continue communicating with Karshan or with him if she knew the real him. As he continued walking down the hall, the boy suggested that if it was about Lien, Lien would definitely accept it. He wanted to think that if she couldn't accept him, then he would have a chance to win her love. After 2 weeks, the exams ended, and although it seemed that everything went quite quickly, they lived the moment from exam to exam. Then the bell rang. The school day ended, and the long-awaited holidays began. Lien helped her neighbor pack her things, to which she said she didn't need her help at all. But the girl said she had nothing to do anyway, and that she had a lot of things, so she couldn't handle it herself. She asked where her best friend lived, to which Jane replied that it was in the south. The neighbor added that just thinking about traveling by carriage made her butt hurt already. But before returning home, she had to pass through the capital to greet old friends from work. She explained that before returning to the academy, she was a lady-in-waiting for an aristocrat. To become not just a maid, but a lady-in-waiting, one must be of noble birth. Seeing the surprise on her friend's face, the girl explained that there was nothing wrong with that, because everyone goes there to make connections. But she went because her family needed money. Lien explained that she thought it was good that she herself decided to earn money for her family. Jane thanked her for her kind words, but there was still a thought in her mind. It seemed to her that she needed to admit right now that she had been watching her all this time. Her friend so wanted to tell her that she was actually watching her, and only thanks to that could she return to the academy. What Jane most wanted to say was that Carson initially had a task to become friends with her. She felt guilty about Lien's kindness towards her, so now she regretted it. Suddenly, she decided to confess everything, so she stopped folding her things. Seeing that the girl wanted to tell her something, Lien asked her what was bothering her so much. To her deep regret, Jane could never confess everything because she was too afraid of losing her close friend. Lien was thinking about what she wanted to tell her about her family or something else. Suddenly, she realized that it had nothing to do with her, so she shouldn't insist on continuing the dialogue. She took her friend's hands and tried to get her attention to listen to her. Once she realized the girl had calmed down, she said that if she didn't want to talk, then she wouldn't insist. But if there was something bothering her and she wanted to discuss, then she couldn't be shy. Because they are friends, tears started to well up in Jane's eyes, because she had never seen such a wonderful person before. The girl happily hugged her friend, and Lien said she would never find such a kind-hearted person anywhere else. Wiping the tears from her eyes, she definitely promised to write to the academy so she wouldn't get bored. Lien replied that she would be waiting for the letters, but that she should still rest during the holidays. One by one, the students went home. There were no clubs or roommates. Due to the loneliness, she quickly started missing life with friends, so she decided to devote herself to studying the medicinal herbs she had previously postponed. This way, she wanted to fill the void, but as soon as she started seriously researching, time flew by in the blink of an eye, and she didn't rest at all. She immediately imagined how everyone around her would start trying to help her advance in her scientific work. Leaning on the table, she realized that she really wanted to see her friends. But then she decided to take a walk, because soon her parents' wedding anniversary would be celebrated. Their graves were in a quiet town, not far from the academy where she lived with her parents. Aside from the annual festival, there were no major events, but that's what made the town so friendly. As she walked through the narrow streets, Lien thought that this year the festival falls during the current season, so she would have to spend the night and take a walk. Seeing the cart with jam, she remembered that she and her parents always brought a jar. She vaguely remembered choosing between strawberry and apple, but then they chose lemongrass. Now she was completely alone, in the middle of a noisy town that had long forgotten the existence of her parents. Remembering that she definitely needed to buy flowers, Lien headed towards the florist. But suddenly, she was drawn to an unusual gleam. She couldn't believe what she saw, because right behind the glass was a huge diamond ring. The girl was surprised that they displayed it so simply so that people couldn't pass by and not notice it. After examining it more closely, she wondered who could buy it, because flowers were much more beautiful. She thought she had never been interested in the beauty of flowers, but only in their medicinal properties. But she started to notice that Karshan began to give her flowers often. Her mom and dad also deserved a beautiful bouquet, but she hadn't found anything suitable yet. She needed a bouquet that would tell them that she had many small joys in her life. including flowers. When she left the florist, she didn't expect so many flowers to come out. She reasoned that now she was not only interested in medicinal herbs, which meant that Kaon's influence was to blame. The girl began to say out loud that she had no idea about the cost of the gifts he gave her, and that they made her happy and not burdened. Passing by the unfortunate ring shop, she saw a man standing next to it. She sincerely hoped that no one with taste would buy something like that. Having walked a little further, Lien was surprised, thinking that she needed at least a little bit of taste. At the same time, the mysterious man said that this ring was very beautiful. There were many different types of jewelry and accessories in the world. Each one had different tastes, but this example was truly tasteless. Her inner demon declared that there was too much in the world, so she shouldn't care what a stranger buys. The angel inside her said the opposite, that it was necessary to prevent something terrible if she witnessed one. The man, for his part, thought that the ring had a great size and color, so his wife would be delighted. He hoped he could finally see her happy smile if he gave her this ring. The stranger was about to announce that he was going to buy this ring when the girl suddenly interrupted him. Lien stated that she couldn't believe he wanted to buy a ring with such a large stone. When asked who he wanted to give a gift to, whether his lover or his wife, he replied that it was none of her business. After carefully examining the stranger, he concluded that she did not look like a mercenary who would be hired by an aristocrat, and perhaps she was a resident of the village. Lien confidently stated that she absolutely did not need this ring, to which the man asked what she was talking about. The girl suddenly realized that the stranger looked very similar to Karshan, so she couldn't pass by. Looking at her bouquet, Lien quickly realized and started choosing the most beautiful flower. The man still couldn't understand why a commoner was standing in front of him with such an unconcerned look. He took out beautiful azaleas and then tied them with a ribbon, saying this would be enough. The girl handed him a small bouquet, and in the meantime, he thought she was an unusual person. Lien put the bouquet directly into his hands and told him that these plants were called azaleas. She added that in the language of flowers, it means the joy of love, so he should not be fooled by the strange ring, because it is better to give flowers. The man held flowers in his hands, surprised, and didn't understand why a stranger was giving them to him. The girl bowed politely and said she hoped his wife would really like the flowers. And then she said goodbye. Lien quickly ran into the crowd because she could no longer bear the tension between them. The diamond still shone annoyingly behind him and gave her no peace at all. The butler ran to the Duke at the first call and told him they were already waiting for him. The man ordered him to buy absolutely everything in this jewelry store. The butler asked if he should get rid of these flowers, to which his master replied that they were neither poisoned nor enchanted, so he would take them. The man immediately went to the carriage where his wife was, who said that the atmosphere on the street was noisy and cheerful. Sylvia, the academy director and Karshan's mother, regretted that her husband had said he would only be gone for a minute. After a while, the carriage door opened, and the Duke of Lysiansky entered. He bowed to her, and she told him that he promised to return in a minute, but that he had been gone for quite some time. The man explained that he just wanted to give her something to remember this holiday. Seeing the flowers in his hand, Sylvia couldn't believe he had brought her such a valuable gift. She was very happy that he had prepared such a sweet and pleasant surprise for her. The woman said that she had already decided to let him leave without notice, to buy her the whole store for her next whim, or to buy jewelry that she couldn't wear and therefore show off. Seeing a bouquet of azaleas, she was pleasantly impressed that he gave them to her. Leonian knelt down and said that azaleas mean the joy of love. That's why he wants to give her the bouquet. Sylvia was even more surprised that he had become so attentive to her that he even learned the language of flowers. The Duke thought that he somehow needed to thank the girl, who explained everything to him. When they got into the carriage, his wife said that their son had been depressed lately due to unrequited love, so she was sad herself, but today he made her very happy. Leonian explained that she was most likely mistaken, and that it was not love at all. She said that rumors have already flooded the academy, so everyone is only talking about the girl their son is in love with. The woman remembered that Kaon asked her to supervise the development of a disciplinary meeting, which considered the violation of academy rules by several students of aristocratic origin, because they flaunted their status and harassed the student. Sylvia said that, as a director, she could not let things remain as they were, so she did everything possible to ensure that the troublemakers were expelled from the academy. Her husband immediately guessed that his son had fallen in love with the same girl the aristocrats were attacking. The wife said she was very happy to see that her son liked someone, like an ordinary boy, but she really felt sorry for that girl, whose only advantage was her beautiful face. The Duke thought for a moment and said that this was definitely a cause for concern. A few weeks later, the Duke's butler arrived at the academy to deliver a letter to Lien. The man bowed and declared that she must read the contents, because it said absolutely everything she needed to know. The girl immediately noticed a golden carriage, which can only be seen in the capital. This seemed very suspicious to her, because none of her friends would do such a thing. But the butler suggested that she look first and then give her answer. Lien tried to get away with it, saying she didn't care how important he thought it was. But then she saw the check inside the envelope, and then the amount written inside. The girl reasoned that the mysterious aristocrat had no reason to look for her, so she needed to check what was inside. Inside, there was only one line, that there was a dispute between the spouses, and she should help him resolve it. Lien thought the man was really in love with writing something like that, but she had a feeling it was the same man she had seen on the street. Suddenly, she realized that the only thing she knew about his wife was that she was happy to receive a bouquet of flowers, and nothing more. The girl thought for a moment, but then remembered that the uncle she met had a decent appearance. Based on these facts, she informed the butler that she needed some time to write an appropriate response. Later that night, at the Duke of Lien's mansion, the butler delivered a letter containing a response from Lien. At his question about whether the letter was really from her, the man affirmed that, just as he had ordered. He handed her the letter, to which she asked him to wait a little while so she could answer it immediately. Shortly before this, in the women's dormitory, Lien was already regretting answering that letter, because she was still not sure that the method would really work. But that man was also an aristocrat, so something like this could offend him. The girl accepted the fact that she could no longer influence anything, and that now everything depended on the strength of love for his wife. The content of the letter was simple and clear, stating that he himself should prepare breakfast for his wife in the morning, making sure to wear a tight shirt and an apron. Sylvia was pleasantly surprised that her husband, the Duke, prepared toast for her himself. He sadly declared that he had no idea whether she would like it or not. His wife clung to his chest and declared that he looked absolutely wonderful. The Duke began to write to her often to find out the next successful method. Then he started receiving letters from Jane. She also received a letter from her aunt, saying she was very sorry she couldn't come home for the holidays. It said that everyone was very worried about her, and that her uncle Luca and Erhin missed her very much. In the last line, Lien squeezed the letter in her hands because she didn't believe Iran missed her. She thought it sounded absolutely disgusting, so her aunt shouldn't have written about it. Trying to calm down, she started breathing deeply, trying to drown out the obsessive thoughts about the past. Crushing the letter in her hands, the girl thought that he was her aunt's eldest son, so someday his name should have appeared in the letter. Opening the desk drawer, she remembered that Kaon had written to her first, and that made her very happy. She was puzzled that there was no news from him during the holidays, so she thought he would return to the city in less than a week. And she didn't expect at all that he could last this long. Lien was very happy to feel needed, and then she saw that the letter said he was dying of impatience, so he would come to her now. The girl couldn't understand what all this meant, but suddenly she heard a strange sound behind her. Turning around, she thought the knocking came from the window or the door. The first thing she decided to do was look at the window, not believing he was capable of such stupidity. Through the open window, directly into the forest, Carson told her he was going to prepare a surprise for her. Lien was very surprised by the unexpected appearance of her good friend. The boy leaned forward a little and immediately began to fall directly towards her. Realizing that he could crush her with himself, she grabbed him and then made sure she was on top of him. The girl asked him why he decided to enter through the window, because it was very dangerous. Kaon couldn't hold back tears of joy, because he missed her very much and still couldn't believe she was right in front of him. She tried to calm him down, but he kept crying, so she assumed he had hurt himself very painfully. The boy assured her that it wasn't a matter of pain at all, and that the tears were flowing because he was very happy. Having calmed down, Lien resignedly accepted his words. I hope he is telling the truth. She thought she didn't expect him to cry when she saw him, and then she felt ashamed for not doing anything for him. The girl said that if he was so unbearable, who could come to her? To which he replied that if he came too early, he would be bored during the holidays. She had allowed Carson to come one day because she didn't expect him to listen to her. But it was the least she could do, so she still couldn't believe he wasn't coming every day. Lien thought that he had kept his promise, and she had acted very foolishly towards him. Seeing her embarrassment, Kaon barely restrained himself from shouting at the beautiful beauty. When he finally saw her, he started crying, so he even pretended to cry so that she would be ashamed. Realizing her mistake, the girl decided to cheer him up. Suddenly, she got the idea to walk around the shopping arcades near the academy. The girl first took him to a photo studio, which was very popular among the academy students. She explained that, since he kept his promise, she would try to keep hers. Lien suggested celebrating their achievements in this interesting place. The boy was happy to agree with her, after which they immediately headed to the photo booth. A few minutes later, they both had several photos in their hands, which left Karshan absolutely delighted. He shouted with joy because he had a picture of them together, in which she was smiling. The girl immediately handed him the payment for the photos, to which Kaon said it wasn't cheap, so he could pay. He explained that it was his initiative, and that he had recently acquired some money. Lien winked at him playfully, and told him that this time she would pay for all the entertainment. Karshan could not utter a word, due to the overabundance of his own feelings, so he just stood up and looked at her. She understood perfectly that this was terribly dangerous, because the boy practically fainted from happiness. Meanwhile, their mutual affection grew stronger, and Kaon began to believe that they should also take pictures at their own wedding. Soon the holidays ended, and all the students returned to the academy on time. Jane informed her that she missed her very much, to which Lien replied with the same words. The girl said that her friend wrote in her letter that the cat defeated a mottled hen in a 3-blow fight, to which her neighbor replied affirmatively. Jane said she was very happy to return to the academy, because she really missed all the fuss surrounding her. Lien reported that there was even too much noise around, to which her friend said it was all because of the new transfer student. She added that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the conclusion of a peace treaty with the Abascantis Empire. The roommate explained that in honor of this, their prince would visit them, and the prince of the empire would go to the academy. Lien wondered why she hadn't heard about this before, as she had never left the academy. Jane explained that this is the nature of the academy, because they are not allowed to mention status. The girl understood that, as long as the children of aristocrats are connected to the outside world, rumors cannot be stopped, so it is better to live in an academy without status than without rules. Although at the same time, they turn a blind eye to many things. The neighbor said that the prince of the empire would start studying from the first day, along with everyone else. Lien was indignant and said that the academy would be restless again, but at least they had lunch on time. In the dining room, she ordered a potato menu, which greatly surprised her friend. The girl explained that she wanted potatoes because they were delicious, no matter how they were prepared. At the next table, she found Amila laughing heartily, who was also eating potatoes. Lien involuntarily thought that perhaps she was eating people like herself, which means it could be considered cannibalism. Her friend told her that Amila's skin looks very good lately. A classmate asked her what her secret was, and while she thought it was all thanks to the potatoes, Amila said that during the holidays, she bought special skincare cosmetics for a fabulous amount of money, about which there are many rumors, although it is very difficult to find even with money. The girl said that when she spreads it, the ointment smells a little and irritates the skin, but she only applied it a few times, and the effect is so noticeable that it is worth it. Her friend began to beg for the name of such a miracle drug, and then began to fidget on her chair with impatience. Amila was condescending to them, and told them that she uses cosmetics called Barman Nirina. Upon hearing this name, Lien immediately began to rise from her seat, while the girl kept saying that she had never heard of it. Lien loudly shouted at Amil, who was eating potatoes, to pay attention to her. The girl, angry, said that she shouldn't see that she was eating potatoes, but that they were bothering her. The busybody slowly approached them and told them that she should immediately get rid of the cosmetics she was using. One of the classmates said that the girl rudely overheard their conversation and ruined her whole mood. Lien explained that the effect would be visible immediately, but if she continued, her skin would suffer greatly, so she needed to stop using these cosmetics immediately. Amila asked why then her skin started looking much better, and her friend said there was no need to worry about that, because they could eat somewhere else. The whole trio quickly moved away from their table, so as not to hear the speeches of the incomprehensible commoner. Varman Nirina is a cosmetic made from the Shigar Hapsho herb and has excellent moisturizing properties. But it contained toxins that could not be eliminated from the body, and although there were no problems at first, with constant use, there was a cumulative effect that led to death. Consequences: after numerous victims, the production and distribution of cosmetics were banned because the side effects were so fatal that nothing helped. The only person who discovered the cause and was able to develop a cure was Lien's mother, so she couldn't stay away. Jane immediately ran to her, wondering if everything was fine with her, because she was acting very strangely. The girl asked if she should deal with the insolent girls, to which her friend replied negatively. She added that she couldn't just walk into her room and throw everything away, but at least she warned them. And time would tell. After lunch, Lien decided to take a walk in the academy garden, reasoning that she needed to make some medicine, because if she didn't stop using cosmetics, she would really need them soon. She complained that no one listened to her, but she just didn't want Amila to turn into a withered potato. The girl decided to stop thinking about it, so she came to the garden to cheer herself up, because she felt very calm walking alone. Lien walked directly towards the stranger, but when she started turning to one side, he also turned in the same direction. Then she changed direction again, to which the boy also changed his trajectory. So at some point, they were very close. Lien decided to let it go and told him that he could go first, to which the boy laughed heartily. He asked her not to draw unnecessary attention to him, because he thought Ragram would be smaller, and it would be a problem. The guy spoke very mysteriously, and then added that such tactics were extremely unpleasant to him. Lien understood absolutely nothing, so she simply continued to stand in silence, letting him go ahead. The girl assumed he said that because he was having a bad day. She decided to remain silent, because if this was a test she had to pass, she would definitely pass it. Lien has always believed that good things come to those who persevere throughout the journey. The girl quickly looked around the garden and exclaimed softly that so much beauty grew at her feet. She bent down to pick it and said that she only noticed it now because she had stopped. The boy turned at her cries and noticed that she was about to pick a flower growing along the path. He tried to stop her by shouting that she dared not do this in the academy garden. The stranger indignantly asked her why she was picking a flower if in a few days she would throw it away. And although she closed her eyes to the fact that she was blocking his way to get her attention, he couldn't disappoint her because she was picking flowers in her own way. The boy threateningly asked her if she really thought the academy garden was being cultivated especially for her. The girl sighed worriedly and asked him what he was talking about. In the Ragra's empire, where Lien was born and raised, there are many plant species, and usually, fruits come from the sepals remaining after the petals fall. But the flowers here are different because they must be broken. She knew that bees are attracted to the flower's scent, and after pollination, the petals open, attracting animals that eat them for the benefits they contain. But then, the flowers wither and the fruit grows near the roots, so people can pick them. Lien picked some of this flower because she needed the ingredients, but this was no reason to judge someone she was seeing for the first time, so she couldn't explain what was happening around her. The girl got up from the ground, to which the boy said he didn't want to hear her excuse. He added that she wouldn't have behaved like that if she knew how much work it takes to grow plants, because for her, it was just a flower. The stranger turned around and started walking away, saying he wouldn't get away with it a second time. Suddenly, Lien had the strange feeling that they would meet again soon. But she didn't want that at all. Carson was waiting for everyone in the club room, rejoicing that from today they would finally see the real Lien, and not the picture. Fjord was the first to enter the room, saying he had come to the meeting. Kaon said that it seemed to him that Lien had entered the room, and not her friend at all. The guy approached him and wondered what he had hidden in his pocket, and since he thought Lien had come, then she shouldn't see it. Carson gave him a complicated answer, to which Fjord noticed he was acting suspiciously, which made him even more curious. He decided to find out everything he could, and the guy began to say that before her, he wasn't even interested in girls. Kaon calmly replied again that he would burn a hole through him with his gaze now. Fjord didn't give up, and said that he should be afraid that Lien would come in and accuse him of hiding something from her, to which his friend replied that if he said another word, that day would be his last. The guy decided this was too much, so he thought he should change tactics. Turning around, he asked if he knew that the girl could not attend the meeting. Carson immediately began to beg for an explanation about the incident, to which Fjord now began to respond with monosyllables. Realizing that the guy had let his guard down, his friend began to quickly attack him in the open chest area. Unfortunately, his hand slipped away because Kaon managed to react in time. And turn around, Karshan grabbed him by the arm and threw him over his shoulder, directly onto the nearby sofa. Kaon threateningly asked how he dared to use his name, and Fjord, meanwhile, thought that although he was a mage, he had good reflexes and strength. The Duke's heir noticed the interest in his eyes, and guessed they were talking about an object he had recently hidden in his pocket, while teasing him by saying that he must be very interested in finding out what he was hiding. Lien quietly entered the room. The girl looked surprised at everything that was happening, but didn't say a word. In her eyes, two beautiful young men seemed too close to each other. Lien asked at what point they decided to change orientation, and if she should leave so as not to disturb them. After a while, she was still able to find out the reason for their small conflict. Fjord reported that his friend's strange behavior was very difficult to tolerate, and Karshan said that if he wanted to see something bad, he could just look under his bed. His friend was not happy about having his little secret revealed, but Kaon jokingly stuck out his tongue at him. This news did not escape Lien's ears, so she looked thoughtfully at her friend, who was keeping something interesting under his bed. Fjord started making excuses, saying there was actually none of that under his bed. Lien explained that if he had something good under his bed, it was worth sharing, because that's what true friends do. He stared at her, trying to understand what she was trying to achieve with such a strange statement. After a while, the girl broke the awkward silence, saying it was all a joke. Lien slumped onto the sofa between them and said she liked watching how they reacted to provocative questions, because it was unlikely that Kaon was actually hiding anything from them, and it was probably a vacation photo. Fjord was very surprised that his friend managed to take a photo with her, and Karshan triumphantly pulled the photo card out of his pocket. His friend suggested they see each other and walk around during the holidays, to which the Duke's heir claimed that he probably spent all the holidays with his girlfriends himself. Fjord started making excuses again, saying that he often changes girls, but that he is not a womanizer at all. He added that he didn't even like everyone, despite them treating him well. Karshan said he wouldn't judge him, but that he would get into big trouble if he kept doing this to girls in love, to which his friend replied that he had broken up with the last girl before the holidays anyway. The boy confidently said that he no longer plans to enter into unnecessary relationships. Lien looked at him closely, and Kaon averted his gaze, guessing that something had happened. Deciding to calm the tense situation, the girl suggested they take a photo together to stop arguing, and also to capture Fjord's bold decision. His friend asked her if she really wanted a photo card with him, to which she replied that he was also part of the club. The boy smiled cheerfully and agreed with her idea, saying it would be a great time. Carson immediately sank, because before he only had one photograph of Lien, and now he planned to take several more. He was already secretly plotting how he was going to get rid of Fjord in the photo, as well as his personal copy of the photo. Lien asked if everyone agreed to take a photo together, to which both happily agreed. She guessed that when they grew up, they would have memories in the photo. The girl thought it would be fun, so she immediately suggested that they all take photos together from time to time. Fjord sat far away from them and practically did not participate in the conversation. But Lien was in a very good mood, so she was up for anything. She reminded them that it was the first time they had met after the holidays, and it surprised her that they had only chatted for a few minutes. But it was as if they had been sitting here every day. Carson said that he really thought about her every day, and the girl suggested that they meet much more often. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and an unfamiliar voice asked if Lien was inside. Fjord asked surprised why the professor came to her in person, and the girl herself was curious why she felt an oppressive feeling. Professor Walter was a good teacher, but he gave the impression of being a tired office plankton. It always seemed like everything bothered him, and he didn't like teaching. The man does not neglect his students, but he also does not approach them when he needs to call someone. The professor told her he had a small request, so he asked her to give him some time. Lien said that of course she could help him, to which he asked if she had really agreed so quickly. The girl said she would only give him some time, but she thought he didn't even explain to her what the essence of the question was. But he wanted her to agree, and that was suspicious. The man noticed that it wouldn't be easy to come to an agreement with her, so he offered to go to the teacher's room. She asked her friends not to fight and to be good boys while she went to the teacher's room. In the office, she met the same student who had treated her so rudely in the academy garden. The boy was as surprised as she was, so neither understood what was going on. The professor explained that in front of her was his friend who had recently transferred to them, so he sincerely hoped they could get along. Professor Walter reminded her that she was also a transfer student, so he had been in her place so that she could understand what it was best to pay attention to. The man said that the boy just arrived at the academy today, so it's quite difficult for him, which means he should take him to places she herself knows. He said that they would start studying tomorrow, so everything had to be done very quickly. The girl asked the professor not to leave so quickly, to which he affirmed that if she really listened to him, she might get the impression that he was an incompetent professor. Walter adjusted his glasses and said that helping the brought student is very important, but that he also has other jobs. The man said he needed to read his students' letters so she could understand how much work he has. The professor asked her to help him at least a little, but he is not forcing her because she can simply turn around and leave if she doesn't like it. Lien said she agreed, and after her words, the professor was no longer in the teacher's room. The girl thought that she didn't even know he could run away from her so quickly. There was an awkward silence in the room because neither wanted to start the conversation first. After a couple of minutes, she asked him what his name was and also how she could address him. The guy said his name was Thomas, and Lynn noticed he didn't give his last name, which means Jane was right. The boy wanted to keep his identity a secret, but on the other hand, everyone knew he was the Prince of Abascantis. His full name was Thomas Edgar Abascantis, and since he was the only transferred student, rumors that he was that very prince would quickly spread throughout the academy. The girl suggested that the first day at the academy could be really difficult. Lien said that if she had any questions, she could ask him for sure. There wasn't a drop of resentment or indignation in her voice. On the contrary, she enthusiastically declared that she really wanted him to learn to cope with everything on his own. The boy was a little surprised by this reaction, since just a few hours ago she had treated him rudely. The girl said that, when she was transferred, she wasn't offered anything like a tour guide, but that she wouldn't be his maid. She added that she wasn't going to play along with this terrible scene, so he would have to deal with everything himself. After her words, she quickly turned around and walked in the opposite direction, saying that she was saying goodbye to him. Suddenly, Thomas grabbed her hand with a handkerchief, trying to stop her. The boy confidently told her that he didn't consider her his maid at all, but that he still needed her help. He explained that this was an academy initiative, but he personally asked the professor to choose her. The prince apologized for the small incident because he didn't want any special treatment. The girl tried to understand if he was really embarrassed or if it was his conscience making itself felt. But in any case, she didn't want to forgive him because he had angered her. Lien politely said that perhaps she just thought he treated her that way. She also said that he continued to hold her hand and use a handkerchief. But at the same time, he said he wouldn't make status differences. The boy quickly withdrew his hand, trying to maintain at least a shred of dignity in his words. He tried to explain that there were some circumstances that prevented him from touching people personally. The girl reacted sharply to this, to which he said that he could at least try to hide his true feelings. To which she replied that she wouldn't be hypocritical because she didn't expect special treatment from her. Thomas said that their first meeting didn't go very well, but that they tolerated each other. He explained that he also didn't want to be in the company of someone who so blatantly harms nature, but that it was a necessary measure. The prince firmly stated that he would also take a step forward so that he could accept her presence. Lien tried to understand if she could speak normally, because it sounded like a call for reconciliation or to fight. After a while, the boy asked her what she thought about all this. The girl said that it would be difficult for her to walk so much and that her shoulders hurt from constantly picking flowers, so he had to manage on his own. As she walked down the hallway, she thought someone had said that Prince Thomas was sick, but he didn't look like that at all. She supposed it was false rumors again that she trusted. The boy was left completely alone in the professor's office, not understanding what he was saying. The prince tried to understand what kind of strange dialogue was taking place between them, because he had no idea what he should be experiencing now. He irritably suggested that all the young people in this empire were full of impudence, but he also hoped that they would not meet in the future. The next day, Lien returned to the usual quiet school routine, but one of her lessons coincided with a new female student. Professor Walter was the class teacher, so it was not surprising that the transferred student ended up with them. Seeing her friend's displeased face, Jane asked her if she needed to go to the infirmary. to which she replied that she just had a slight headache. A friend told her that she had become too popular lately, and Lien said she didn't want to be like that at all. She told Jane everything last night because she needed to talk about it, and Kaon and Fjord were not the right people for it. Her neighbor said that her new classmate was very cute, to which Lien said he only had a cute face, but that otherwise he was terrible. She said he was a prince from a neighboring country, so she didn't think there would be another boy like him anywhere. Their conversation was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of Thomas, who cast his shadow over her. The boy said he was very sorry to interrupt their conversation, but he urgently needed to talk to Lien. The girls looked at him in disbelief, not understanding what else he needed from them. The prince involuntarily thought that perhaps all the girls in this empire had such a complex character. Lien got up from the table and said that if he had something to say, then he could speak bravely. Suddenly, Karshan appeared between them, not allowing the newcomer to say anything. The girl asked what happened that he appeared in front of her so unexpectedly, to which he replied that he was in the shop and remembered her. The next second, many sweets appeared around him, and the Duke's heir continued talking about how he bought all sorts of different things. The sweets flew into a box, to which she asked with interest why there were so many. Jane reminded her that it was time to want something sweet, because that same day of the month was approaching. Lien politely thanked him and told him that next time, she would invite him to dinner at a very nice place. Hearing this, Karshan immediately flew away with his thoughts somewhere far away, where he had already made joint plans for their lives. Suddenly, he realized that she would invite him to dinner at a nice place, which meant it could be called a date. Embarrassed, Kaon asked her to promise him that she would invite him soon. The girl held out her little finger to him and told him to swear with all her heart to do this. The boy looked closely at her hand, still not believing that they would have a real date. He took her little finger with his, and both swore to keep their mutual promises. Jane and Thomas silently watched everything happening around them because Carson and Lien did not seem to notice them. The cheerful silence was first interrupted by Kaon, who was very interested in one question. He pointed to an unfamiliar boy and asked if they really had a new classmate in their class. The girl explained that he had just been transferred and then felt a box of popcorn among the sweets. Although it was a gift, many people didn't want to eat it alone, so she invited her friend to try the sweets. Meanwhile, great tension arose between the boys, which was felt throughout the class. Karshan turned to him and asked what he was doing next to Lien and why he needed to see her. Thomas also angrily asked why he should care what happens inside a class that is not his. Everyone around them whispered that Karshan had spoken to the Empire's prince, but they were all very afraid of both of them. Lien enjoyed the show, ate the popcorn they provided, and she also asked her friend if she understood what it was about. Jane thought it was very interesting to watch the confrontation between her boss and the imperial son. He periodically informed her about Lien's interests, but not about something as personal as her morals. Moreover, she herself had only recently learned about his problems with the prince, so the boy had no way of knowing. The girl noticed that he brought Lien sweets exactly when the prince decided to annoy her. Jane assumed that the boy perceived her mood and cared about her, but he remained the same Karshan Delasiansky, whose cruelty and indifference were rumored. She quickly realized that she had misunderstood everything, so now she watched with interest everything that happened. Karshan stood with such confidence, as if he were about to immediately send the prince back to his home empire. Thomas said that the boy doesn't even look like a student in this class, so he should leave. Kaon menacingly explained that he does what he wants, and then asked him why he was in this class. To his answer that from that day on he was studying here, the boy explained that he should return where he belongs. Thomas was surprised that his opponent knew who he was, but still acted this way. Lien continued to chew popcorn and watch what was happening, hoping that they would soon return to their places. Karshan seemed to hear her thoughts and said that it would be over soon completely, and he would go to his class. Passing by the prince, he touched his shoulder and told him to get out of here. The guy rudely asked if he really needed to bring a chair so he could sit on it. Thomas removed his hand from his shoulder and declared that he should go get the chair himself and not give him orders. All the classmates around could not believe that the new companion could pull his hand away from Karshan's. The guy smiled with satisfaction, but did not respond to such a strong attack from the enemy. The prince reminded him to be much more careful next time. A couple of seconds later, Kaon's hand appeared right on the neck of the newly arrived student. The boy smiled with satisfaction and told the prince to be more careful. He said there were no walls or knights around who could protect him. And Thomas, meanwhile, realized that the guy knew he would come back, so he deliberately hit him in the face. Karshan tried to pull Thomas away from Lien, but the latter took his hand off his shoulder, so the guy pushed him. Lien, watching them, thought that her friend was creating exactly the same problems as any other boy. For a while, Jane Jett didn't understand why her boss pushed him so suddenly, and almost hit the prince himself in the face. She knew that Karshan was not the type to cause trouble openly, unless he had an ace up his sleeve. The boy immediately smiled cheerfully, implying that this brought him pleasure. Meanwhile, Thomas held his bruised shoulder and was still trying to figure out if the guy knew exactly who he was. The imperial son wondered why there was so much insolence towards the crown prince of the empire around him, and he had to endure it silently. He was the first to say that they should stop because he didn't want trouble. The guy walked past Carson and explained to him that this would be the end of his conversation with him. Thomas slowly left the office, intending to get some air in the spacious hallway. Jane felt an impending heavy atmosphere filling the entire classroom. Fortunately, after that, everyone took their seats and the lesson began. But Lien had never seen her classmates take their seats so quickly. But at the same time, she still couldn't concentrate on the lesson and sincerely hoped there wouldn't be any more tremors. Suddenly, Hans ran up to her, wondering if she had seen the announcement that there would be group work in medical botany again this semester. The girl sharply turned to him and angrily asked if it was really necessary to tell her about this right now. Having calmed down a bit, she thought that Hans had befriended many of the medical botany attendees, so there shouldn't be any problems, but she was in a position where she had to wait for the stragglers. The boy immediately told her that he was going to join the same group as her to participate in a joint project. She asked him surprised why he had made that decision, because he had many friends. He said that there are many, but you have to choose one. And she was the best in this subject, so he couldn't help but consider her candidacy. Lien quickly realized that this guy had already proven himself when he personally removed her name from the group. She was glad that no one else bothered her, except him, of course, so she agreed. Hans sighed with relief, and then said that there would be plenty of time this semester, and that they might be assigned to develop a cure as a task. The girl said that Professor George knows the level of knowledge of his students, so he doesn't expect anything supernatural from them, but he wants to see what kind of research they will conduct in the process of developing a medicine. He added that he would try to do everything in his power, and if it didn't work out, he would use his recipe, as well as notes on the creation process. Lien explained that she has been studying medicinal herbs since childhood, so she has many useful notes. Hans couldn't help but assume that it would be dishonest of him to reap the benefits of someone else's efforts. This statement made her laugh a lot, and he kept looking at her surprised. The girl asked him if he was really going to take advantage of her, to which he replied that this was not the case at all. Suddenly, Karshan reappeared between them and greeted someone. She calmly asked him if his classes were over yet, to which he replied that he thought they were definitely over for her. So he immediately came to her. Hans realized that the rumors were true, and in fact, he was very attached to Lien. Kaon told her that before the lesson, he went a little too far, so he wanted to apologize to her, to which she said that she was not offended at all. Karshan thanked her kindly, sincerely happy that she was not angry with him. The boy abruptly asked about a classmate standing right behind him. The girl explained that this was Hans, with whom she had taken joint classes in medical botany. Carson wondered if this guy was also causing her trouble. He explained that she could always tell him, and he would do everything possible to make sure no one bothered her again. Lien explained that he was her friend and, in her opinion, was very kind. The boy angrily asked how she could call a person a good comrade if he was hiding behind her, to which the girl replied that she already had someone she liked. Carson explained that even if this were true, he might like Lien someday. Hearing this, Hans shouted in horror and said that this would never happen because he has different tastes, because he likes Jane much more than Lien. This whole conversation was unexpectedly overheard by her friend Jane, who did not expect such a turn of events. An awkward silence reigned in the hallway, but neither Hans nor Lien paid attention to Jane, who was nearby. The girl noticed how flushed her new medical botany companion was. Her friend approached them and told them that dance classes had been added to the general curriculum this semester, so that they could go to the ballroom together. The girl said that there were many changes in the new semester, and then said goodbye to Carson. Jane finally told Hans that she didn't want confessions because she wasn't going to date a stranger. The boy's heart was broken, so he remained like a stone in the middle of the hallway for a long time. He couldn't believe that everything had happened so quickly because he didn't even have time to get to know her. Dancing formed the basis of social life and culture. The academy did not distinguish between commoners and aristocrats, so everyone studied the same dances. Lien was going to dance with Jane, but she didn't like the idea of taking away her good opportunity. A teacher approached the girl and asked if she hadn't found a partner. She assumed there was a mistake, but they always have the same number of boys and girls. The woman called her over and told her that her dance partner was right in front of her. The teacher led her to Thomas and said they would be dance partners this semester. The boy also didn't expect to see her in this room, so he introduced himself to her again. The girl noticed that he was again dissatisfied, but sincerely tried to hide his hostility towards her. A tense atmosphere was created between them and the teacher. Meanwhile, she said they would learn the basics that did not require the participation of a partner. He added that the next time they dance together, they must make sure to have a flower as a gift for their partner in advance. The woman warned them that the meaning of the flower had to be more than appropriate. The girl recalled that the boy reacted very sharply when he almost plucked the flower. She was interested in the question of why she didn't tell the dance teacher anything about this. Lien thought with a malicious smile that she knew very well what flower would be perfect for this boy. In Carson and Fjord's class, the teacher talked about IEL at the ballroom next lesson. As they walked down the hallway, they talked about how fantastic it was that the teacher chose their partners herself. This way, they had less trouble. Fjord assumed that Lien had to take a dance lesson before them, which meant she had to practice individual movements in front of her partner. As soon as he said this, Carson immediately burst into flames, which greatly frightened everyone around him. Suddenly, he realized that Lien also had a dance partner. When they arrived at the club room, his friend told him to calm down because Lien had gone to the mountain. Carson kept moving from place to place and biting his nails from tension, thinking that as soon as he got a dance partner, he would immediately go for flowers. He was also worried about the fact that she might have had more than one partner, which worried him even more. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, after which the girl said that she had finally returned to them. She was wearing a tracksuit, which implied that she had just returned from the mountain. Kaon noticed that the girl looked cute in any form, and Fjord thought he could practically hear his thoughts. The boy asked her why she had gone to the mountains and why they invited him to help collect herbs. Lien explained that this time she had gone to pick flowers, to which Kaon suddenly fell silent and bowed. She invited him to look at what she had collected in the mountains and then searched her bag. The next day, in the ballroom, the teacher announced that partners should stand facing each other. She announced loudly, to the whole room, that they needed to give flowers to their partners. The girl mysteriously asked if he had really brought her a flower. The boy calmly replied that he did exactly what was asked of him to impart the lesson. Suddenly, he took out a beautiful white rose and said that he had chosen a flower that would suit her perfectly. She just thought that he, like everyone else, decided to pick a flower for her. Lien smelled the rose carefully and said she didn't have to say anything because she already understood everything. Usually, a snow-white rose was not given to dance partners because it meant envy and jealousy. Moreover, a special variety of white rose from a bascanthus is this flower of rejection, which was called the white umbrella. When she told him this, Thomas was a little confused because he didn't expect her to know so much about flowers. The girl said she would accept his rejection along with the flower, and then decided it was her turn to give the flower. Lien, with all her strength and speed, took out the flower she had picked the day before from behind her back. The boy covered his face with his hands and then carefully examined the plant she gave him. The girl explained that she dug up the siasnik especially for him because he doesn't like having flowers picked for him. Thomas was a little bewildered, so he couldn't say anything for a while. But in the distance, he could hear the loud laughter of Jane, who perfectly knew what her friend was going to give him. Lien said that after the lessons, she would be able to replant the plant, so everything would be fine with him. The boy thought it wasn't a flower at all, but just grass, which means she was making fun of him. Looking closer at the gift, he realized that the grass had tiny flowers, so he admitted defeat. The teacher, for his part, said that after exchanging flowers, they would be able to start practicing. But first, they would start with greetings. Lien firmly decided that she would go all the way, so she bowed as the teacher ordered her. The woman also said that the boys then come up to invite the girls to dance. Seeing how everyone around her started moving, the girl couldn't understand why he wasn't in a hurry to take her hand. This didn't bother her at all, after which she extended her hand to him because she couldn't wait for a gesture from him anymore. Everything seemed casual, and she asked him if he would agree to dance with her. Thomas evasively stated that he did not want to do this, to which she replied that girls place the palm on the offered hand, and the other on the shoulder of their partner. She couldn't understand why he was refusing, since he himself had come to the dance class. Deciding that he would ruin her goal, Lien started to act on her own and reached for the imperial prince's neck. The girl pulled him towards her and told him that he must do everything the teacher asked. Thomas quickly looked at his hand, which already held his partner's hand. The boy rejected the girl's hand with all his might, so that she wouldn't dare touch him under any circumstances. Lien said with concern that she was actually in a lot of pain because he hit her with all his strength. The prince apologized to her in a trembling voice and then simply turned around and walked towards the exit. The girl suddenly realized that she felt something strange when she touched his neck and the arm. She thought about it for a long time because she couldn't believe it was really true. The teacher told her that he would speak to Mr. Thomas separately because he was disrupting class discipline. One of the boys said that his partner wasn't in a hurry to injure the class, so they left him alone, and then suggested that he join Lien. The girl didn't find out about this conversation at all, so the boy managed to go unnoticed. He was the first to greet her, and then Lien turned to the approaching boy. The stranger said his name was Simon, and that he would be her dance partner now. Lien looked at him for a while, not understanding what was unusual about him. Unfortunately, she didn't know what all her classmates looked like, so she easily trusted him. The boy offered her his hand and very kindly asked if he could invite her to dance. It seemed to her that his smile was very familiar, almost native. The music began to play, and the girl noticed that her new partner's hand was trembling noticeably, and his fingers were very tense. There was a bright blush on his face, and she could practically hear this boy's heartbeat. She kept staring at him, trying to figure out when she had seen him before. For a moment, she thought Simon reminded her of Karshan, who acted the same way towards her. In fact, it was exactly like that, because Kaon came to the dance in someone else's body just to watch her dance. But he ended up being paired with her. At the same time, in Carson's class, Fjord almost immediately noticed that, instead of his friend, there was an illusion sitting next to him. Lien, for her part, told her partner that she practically knew nothing about him. She thanked him for being there, because otherwise she might have been left without a partner. Suddenly, the boy carefully examined her bruised hand and then silently performed a little magic. At the end of the dance, he stated that he was happy to dance with her and looked forward to future classes. As soon as he let go of her hand, Lien noticed that the bruised area no longer hurt, and that there was no trace of the blow. The teacher told them that they had done a good job, so now they could return to their original positions to learn dance etiquette. The girl thanked her partner and asked him to take care for the next choice. Upon arriving in her room, Lien couldn't stop thinking about the fact that while talking to her new dance partner, she constantly thought about Carson, and he also somehow healed her hand with magic. She decided that whatever wasn't done was for the best, but first she needed to finish the letter. First of all, she replied to the uncle, who asks for help with his marriage because his advice, using the apron breakfast technique, worked well. The girl couldn't believe that the man turned out to be an aristocratic nobleman, although his taste was absolutely terrible. Lien discreetly thought that she should ask if this man had a son. She decided to reply to her aunt with the second letter, but Iran's letters took up almost an entire box, and she couldn't stand the smell of her stinky lavender. She was currently at the academy and was not in danger, but after her studies, she would have to return to her aunt or move out. Her family's budget was spent on treating her parents, so she has no inheritance. But there was one advantage, because she could use herbs to earn extra money, but she couldn't enter the market, since she had neither capital nor connections, only knowledge. Herbs, so she needed a partner who could protect her product and her interests. The girl leaned exhausted over the table and decided there was no point in thinking about it now. She faced another problem related to barmaneering, a skincare product that was withdrawn from the market due to its toxicity. She decided that she shouldn't bother, but rather make medicine for a classmate, because that's what she does best. Although she didn't know if she would listen to her, as a botanical doctor who has a license, she couldn't leave. Sue, the girl, also remembered the strange sensations when she put her hand around Thomas's neck. and then his subsequent reaction to this action. Lien didn't know what to do, because if she bowed her head to him and apologized, that wouldn't change anything. A few days later, Amila was hiding in the infirmary and trying to devise a plan to avoid the side effects of cosmetics. Her entire face immediately began to burn after she woke up in the morning, and then turned red. Now she sat on the floor of the infirmary and reasoned that it was very strange that she couldn't feel her own face. The girl cried bitterly and realized that perhaps she wouldn't be able to avoid all the consequences of her decision. She now realized that Lien had already warned her back then not to use those cosmetics. Amila didn't understand how she could ask her for help now, because in that case her pride would be offended. The girl realized with horror that if she didn't ask for help, her face would soon turn into a bloody mess. Suddenly, Lien entered the first aid station and asked if potatoes were really here, to which she replied that she didn't want to see anyone. The girl didn't immediately understand that only one person called her Papa, and that she was supposed to become his savior. Lien politely placed the ointment jar next to the screen without looking inside. She explained that she made medicine for subsequent cosmetics, because what she is feeling now is only the initial stage. But if the ointment is applied, it will disappear in a few days. The girl added that she gave her the medicine, but otherwise the choice is hers alone. Because of such unexpected generosity, Amila involuntarily burst into further tears, realizing that her classmate had saved her pride. Before leaving, Lien suggested that she at least invite her to lunch after healing her skin with an ointment. All this was too humiliating for Amila, but even though she treated her badly, Lien still prepared medicine for her. The day she gave the medicine to the talking Papa, something strange happened on the way to the club after class. In one of the hallways, she accidentally dropped the Imperial Prince on the floor. She realized with horror that she only wanted to crush the mosquito that was sitting on his back, and the guy just fell unconscious. Carson suggested that the girl herself decided to deal with the bad guy who was bothering her. The girl explained that she just wanted to hit it harder to kill the mosquito, but it couldn't withstand her blow. Fjord asked why they decided to bring him to the club room, to which she replied that she wanted to take him to the infirmary, but he started mumbling that he would never go there. Lien realized that the boy was starting to get a fever due to heat stroke, so they urgently needed to cool his body. Kaon suddenly asked if water would be suitable for this, to which she replied affirmatively. The boy said that if she urgently needed water, he would immediately organize everything. The girl sincerely thanked him, and Fjord thought his friend was being too helpful. Lien suggested that he fill the jar with clean water, but Carson had his own plans for it. A couple of moments later, a large amount of water spilled directly onto Thomas, who was lying on the sofa. The boy quickly woke up and tried to catch his breath, because he had drunk too much water before. Kaon jokingly said that he hadn't practiced for a long time, so he was a little mistaken about the amount of water. The girl immediately realized that he was just lying and wasn't blushing, because a genius who knows how to teleport cannot be mistaken in the basics of magic. Thomas told everyone that he was fine, and was even cheered up by such a waterfall. She said she was very happy that he was okay, but that he was sick. So she took him to the club room and not the infirmary, because otherwise she would get into trouble if he got sick. The girl sternly stated that she knew very well that Carson usually had prejudices against others, but in this case, it was inappropriate. The boy did not expect such a strange reaction from the girl at all, because she had never scolded him for this before. Lien offered to bring Thomas a towel, to which he said he could take care of it himself. When he started collecting water around him, the girl realized that he belonged to the sylphs. The water around him continued to accumulate in his hand, and then was gently placed into the jar. She immediately asked him if he was an elementalist, to which he replied that his element was wind. Elementalism requires different skills than ordinary magic, so she now sincerely thanked him for deciding to help him, because he actually hoped that she would just leave him. The boy added that he sincerely apologizes for hitting her so abruptly a few days ago. But in his defense, he said that he has some problems with his hands. The girl suggested that he has partial hyperhidrosis, to which he replied that except for his hands, his body practically does not sweat. And in the summer, he cannot regulate his body temperature, so he often passes out from heat stroke. Lien suggested that he has partial anhidrosis and hyperhidrosis, so he cannot sweat. But his hands sweat much more than usual. He immediately told her that on the same day they were supposed to dance, he felt his neck was suspiciously dry, and his important hands He explained that he had experienced this many times before, so he didn't want to go to the medical center so as not to worry his family unnecessarily. The girl confidently stated that all this explained the rumor about the illness of the second Prince Abascantus. The boy suddenly realized that the girl perfectly understood who he was, to which he added that there were no people in the academy who didn't know who he was. Fjord also confirmed that the rumors had been spreading since the first day he arrived. Thomas bowed gloomily and stated that all this time he thought he had managed to blend in with the crowd, and that he addressed everyone with respect. The boy apologized for having a false impression of her after their first meeting. Looking at her intently, he realized that he had come to a foreign land, so his reaction was quite justified because he had to fight with his own body. A medicine made with inhibitors can correct his hyperhidrosis in a short time. He was embarrassed that their relationship had smoothed over after just one apology, but he believed that he could pay her exorbitant prices for the medicine. Thomas got up from the sofa and said it was time for him to leave, to which she told him to come the next day at the same time. She repeated what she had told him again to make sure the boy listened to her. The prince thought that it was really not easy with her, but after their conversation, he wanted to know more about her. Lien quickly decided that it was time to stop thinking about the lucky prince, because she still had one problem. Karshan sat on the floor the whole time, not noticing what was happening around him, because the thoughts that she had scared him were still spinning in his head. The girl slowly approached him and asked if he was okay. The boy suddenly revealed that he was trash and that he did not deserve to exist in this world. Lien knelt down and told him that he should calm down because she would not hate him for some little thing. She explained that she could get into trouble because of him, because he could not control himself. The girl asked him not to attach too much importance to her words, because nothing bad had happened. Carson suddenly burst into tears and said he was very sorry for worrying her, but that she was completely right that due to his jealousy, she constantly got into trouble, so he was prepared for the fact that she might hate him. After these words, he bowed his head again, not wanting anyone in this world to notice him. She did not want him to be discouraged at all, but at the same time, she did not know what to say to cheer him up. When she was little, her father often talked about how when her mother was angry, he simply did his best to make her feel better. But when he was angry, her mother knew a trick. She said that she kisses him quickly, because if you kiss him quickly, you can cheer yourself up immediately. The girl suggested that her mother use the magic of a kiss, which can heal everyone around her. After that, she also decided that she would kiss everyone, so she immediately started kissing the duck and flowers. Now it seemed to her that little Lien should kiss the big kitten Rose on the forehead. In fact, she kissed the immobilized Karshan on the forehead, who did not expect her to do this at all. The girl did not immediately realize what she had done now, and what awaited her in the future. After this kiss, Lien realized with horror that she had unfortunately crossed the forbidden line. A few days later, Fjord was telling his friend that he was dirty because he hadn't washed his face for several days. Carson confidently declared that he did not want to wash the place where she kissed him. His friend could not believe that Kaon was acting like a little child, so he decided it was time to give up this idea. Fjord could not stand to see the state Carson was in, so he decided he had one last chance. The boy explained that he would immediately show his dirty, grimy face to Lien, who would clearly not be happy about this. He sincerely hoped that such a threat would have some effect on the love-struck idiot. His friend suddenly asked what else he had besides a beautiful face. Fjord said he knew nothing about that because it wasn't his face. Carson suddenly changed his mind and told him that in this case, it was really worth washing. After class, he immediately found her, after which he bombarded her with questions about what she would like to do, and if she would like to eat something. Lien expected to forget everything soon, but it didn't happen at all. She understood that he had such a reaction because of the spilled water, but she was still worried. So she couldn't sleep, and that's why she didn't know how she should feel about it. After some thought, the girl began to say that yesterday was not of great importance, so he should understand it. She added that, in her opinion, he made a big mistake on that fateful night. Lien cursed him to forget everything that happened in the office of this club. The boy told her that he could never forget it, because it was the most vivid memory of his life. He explained that he already regretted his decision to wash his face this morning. The girl tried to figure out how to change everything, because she wanted to run away from them so as not to talk about this topic anymore. Her prayers were answered, and Thomas entered the room and asked if anyone was inside. She cheerfully jumped up from her seat and declared that he could enter, sincerely happy that he was finally useful. The prince asked her if she had interfered in their dialogue, to which she replied that she had arrived just in time. Thomas was scared because Karshan seemed very mysterious, and Kaon himself sincerely enjoyed the fact that she kissed him. And now he doesn't care about everyone around him. Lien quickly found a medicine in her bag and said that this was what she wanted to give him. She explained that she had created a cure for hyperhidrosis that would solve his problem of excessive hand sweating. The girl added that if he applied the ointment in cream form once every 3 days, the sweating would decrease, and then the use of the drug could be reduced to once every 2 weeks, and then to once a month to gradually improve his condition. The boy could not believe what he heard, so he asked her if his hyperhidrosis could really be cured. She said that the sweat from his palms would simply redistribute throughout his body. So if he slowly adjusted the amount of sweat on his hands and changed his activity, it would release in other places. Lien told him that she just needed to artificially induce it elsewhere with the help of a medicine, and then the whole body would sweat evenly. He was interested in the question of how many people were involved in his treatment, to which she jokingly asked if he really wanted to get the coveted medicine. She explained that they were going to give it away for free, but it was his decision whether to believe her or not. Since he was little, he had been surrounded by doctors and scientists looking for a cure, but none of them could cure him. Those who tried with conviction, as well as those who boasted of their knowledge, ended up being kicked out of the castle, so he quickly gave up. He was tormented by doubts, but he still sincerely wanted to trust her and try her miracle remedy. Thomas bowed to her and told her that he would definitely accept it, after which he asked her how much she had in stock. The girl said that she had only made him one small bottle, but that she could give it back to him when the product ran out. Karshan watched closely as she handed him the medicine bottle, hoping their hands would not touch. The boy sincerely said that he believed it would work, to which she replied that it could not fail, because she herself had personally prepared it. Thomas started making excuses, saying he meant that it was great that she was creating her own medicine to help others. Then he suddenly asked her where he sweated most often, and then suggested that he sweated more where his skin came into contact with clothing. It was as if a fire had formed around him, but Lien angrily asked him what he had just said. The guy realized that he had made an absolute blunder again, but a teleport had already formed behind him. A few moments later, the prince disappeared from the club room, and Karshan snapped his fingers smugly. He immediately started offering his forehead, saying that it had ended well with him. So he decided to help him out of the room, but to do so he had to kiss him on the forehead again. The stubborn Duchess Heir said that if he didn't want to kiss him, he could go on a date with him. Because he had promised her, he reminded her that, when he gave her a box of chocolates, she promised to take him out to dinner. Lien thought she didn't even expect it to be a date, because she just wanted to treat him. She understood that if she stayed in the club, then everything would remind her of the recent kiss. So she definitely needed to be blocked by other events. The girl explained that they were not going on a date, but simply enjoying a delicious meal together, and that it didn't mean anything. Seeing how much he wanted it, Lien firmly decided that they would leave immediately. The boy told her that he was not entirely ready for this, but she reminded him again that this was just a meal, not a date. She casually told him that he shouldn't be so nervous, because it wouldn't be the last time. It was as if Karshan had been struck by lightning, because not even in his wildest dreams could he imagine that she herself would say these words. The Duke's heir was pleasantly surprised, and tenderly said that he hoped they wouldn't stop there. Lien quickly realized that she had said something completely wrong again, which meant that he would once again feel inspired by hope. The shopping district around the academy was full of expensive shops, because many promising heirs of aristocrats lived there, but she chose a restaurant that was considered the most delicious establishment in the area. They had a small problem before entering, but still managed to get a table. The boy was worried that this place was too expensive, so he constantly offered to pay for her. The girl explained that this time Thomas would pay for everything, because she was spending the money she received from him. He supposed that she didn't have to pay for the whole dinner. The girl said they got a good table because they could watch the sunset, to which he replied that he sees this sky every day at the academy, but today it seemed special to him. Lien confidently confirmed his words and suggested that the evening was truly special. She said she was very happy they came to this establishment because she had always wanted to visit it, to which he explained that she just needed to tell him. so they could come here anytime. The girl perfectly understood that if she told him this, he would simply rent or buy the entire restaurant, so she said she only wanted to come when she had the chance. The boy said he always believed she didn't care about money because she received it and spent calmly. Lien explained that her aunt never deprived her of her pocket money and that when she was little, she used to collect herbs for the villagers. Carson listened to her story in surprise and continued talking about how, when she was a child, she lived with her parents in a small village. But they died early, so her aunt took her in. She added that there was no need to be sad about this, because her aunt and uncle were wonderful people, and her parents' death was too long ago, but she still comes every year and lays flowers on their anniversary. In fact, the boy had known this story for a long time because Jane told him everything. He also checked her background, so he was already informed about everything. But the reason he listened to Lien was the simplest possible. All Carson wanted was for her to personally tell him the story of her life. At that moment, for the first time, he felt that the information he had received was just words. But when he heard the story from her lips, the information made sense and penetrated his heart. He realized that Lien loved her aunt very much, not only because she was affectionate and understanding. When she talked about her aunt, her expression became very soft. But if this conversation hadn't happened, who would never have known this about Lien? He kept thinking that he could listen to her incessantly, memorizing every little detail of her life. And then he decided that he wanted her to talk about him too. Carson concluded by saying that by helping her aunt with the herbs, she was able to become who she is now, to which she replied affirmatively. In response to his question about whether her aunt was a merchant, the girl said that she was actually an aristocrat because her family was very rich, so her aunt was involved in investments, but not in trade. She perfectly understood why he thought that, since most commoners entering the academy come from wealthy merchant families. She had a slightly unusual case, but she wasn't going to go into detail. In fact, she was a commoner by birth, but her mother and aunt were daughters of the aristocratic armory family. Her mother never became a lady, preferring to focus on studying medicinal herbs instead of her duties. But her aunt became the head of the family while being a weak woman, so she brought her son-in-law to run the house and estate with her. Subsequently, her mother fell in love with her father, who was from the Abascan Empire, whom she met while studying medicinal herbs. It was customary for citizens of the empire to inherit their father's surname, but her father had no surname. In their empire, most commoners did not have surnames, so it didn't matter anyway. Because of this, she became a commoner with noble roots from her mother's side. The girl thought her aunt was going to adopt her, but she shouldn't have told her friend. The boy quickly noticed that the expression on her face had changed, so he asked her what was wrong. Lien jokingly told him that she was just remembering her childhood, but in reality, she was confused in her own thoughts. She said that she usually studied herbs in books, and if the name of the herb was not in the book, but she had heard of it, she would look for it anyway. The girl explained that sometimes she invited her aunt to a picnic, and when they went out of the village to another region, she would dig up many plants that could only be found there. Carson suggested that this was an incredibly exciting activity, and it immediately became clear that her aunt loved her very much. Lien said they had been talking only about her for a long time, but assured him that she only wanted to listen to him. She also invited him to talk about his family, because most likely he also had something to tell. Their conversation was observed by the femme fatale, who could not believe what she was seeing with her own eyes. She quickly approached their table and exclaimed that it was a great coincidence to meet him in such an establishment. Lien asked if she really knew this woman because she didn't react at all to her presence. The boy calmly explained that he had no idea she was like this. The woman explained that it didn't matter who she was, because she was much more suitable for him than anyone else. Lien thought her companion had said he didn't even know her, but the woman kept talking to him without paying attention to the fact that she was sitting next to him. Suddenly, Carson asked her if she was done eating, to which she replied affirmatively. The woman, meanwhile, said she had heard rumors about the academy and that when she first heard them, it seemed very strange to her. She looked closely at the girl sitting across from her and said that now she understood what was being discussed. The stranger started to laugh softly, and then her laughter was heard throughout the restaurant. The woman clearly enjoyed putting everyone around her in an awkward position. She abruptly leaned her elbows on the table and told them what she was really interested in. The boy, meanwhile, calmly observed everything that was happening, clearly not understanding what to do. The stranger said she didn't understand why he had such strange hobbies. She excitedly said she had overheard their conversation, and it turned out her companion had been digging in the dirt since he was little. But it was definitely not worth entering this restaurant with dirty hands. The girl calmly replied that no, because she hadn't seen any sign about it. She explained that she knew the sign prohibiting entry with dirty hands well, because she studied at the Faculty of Pharmacology, so she touches the ground at least once a week. The woman was very surprised by this fact, because she did not expect the commoner to decide to fight back at all. The stranger began to attack Lien, but suddenly Karshan's laughter stopped her. The boy said she made him laugh a lot with such a bold statement about the sign. The woman looked at him surprised, as she had never seen the boy laugh until that moment. She couldn't believe that the commoner had turned her words into a joke in front of Karshan. But the boy, meanwhile, reached out his hand to the girl, telling her he was going to take her. Lien reached out her hand in response, but she didn't understand what he was going to do with it. Karshan smiled mysteriously, and after a couple of moments, they disappeared from the restaurant. After only a couple of seconds, the two found themselves floating in the sky, which was filled with bright sunset colors. He apologized that it was the first place that came to mind, but promised that they could go down quickly. This was not the first time the girl had teleported, but she would never have imagined being able to fly through the air. With her heart racing from the beauty of the scenery, she asked him who this girl was and if it was possible to leave her, to which he promised he would handle it alone. Kaon declared that, based on his experience, it was better to deal with her than with that crazy woman. Lien suddenly remembered that they had completely forgotten to pay for the food, to which he explained that the place belonged to his family. He added that he didn't say so because he was afraid it would be difficult for her to communicate with him. She suddenly realized that they had entered without an appointment and got the best window seat. Since he didn't pay for it, she suggested going for dessert afterwards to thank him somehow. The boy quickly agreed and said it would be a great idea. They arrived at one of the bakeries, where she said she had also wanted to come to this place that Jane had talked about for a long time. Karshan looked around carefully and then stopped his companion, who was going up the stairs. He asked him to take his seat because he needed to go to the restroom. In the dim light of the tavern, her face looked very cute but still worried. The girl did not go into details, so she simply told him to come back to her quickly. She quickly found a table by the window overlooking the city at night. After a while, Karshan approached her, carrying his order with him, saying he had passed by on the way, and picked it up. She was still interested in the question of why he didn't know the girl, but she knew him as if for a long time, to which he replied that there were many people who knew him. She understood that he was the Duke's heir and had a beautiful appearance, so there were endless rumors floating around him. While eating a delicious cake, Lien said that if you eat something delicious, your mood will definitely improve, so you must eat it all before returning to the dormitory. For her, the academy was a kind of refuge, so she thought perhaps it was the same for Karshan. Because in a life full of hundreds of foreign glances, he needed to find a place where he could remain a teenager for a while. Lien sincerely hoped that this time would be fun and carefree for her. They walked for a long time through the city at night, observing the small trifles surrounding them everywhere. She asked him if he liked dinner, to which he replied that he couldn't even think about it, because everything was wonderful. The boy involuntarily recalled the moment he had to leave her to go to the restroom. Indeed, he noticed that the same abnormal woman had been watching them the whole time. He went out to see her, and she decided that he had noticed her burning gaze and finally decided to approach her. The woman said she was very happy to finally abandon that dog and decided to come to her. The boy explained that he doesn't know her at all, but for some reason she keeps following them. The stranger said she was a year older, but all this happened a year ago, so maybe he doesn't remember her. He added that he took a leave of absence to be closer to him, but he will be able to see her next year, because if he knows her and her worth, he will definitely accept her. Carson looked at her angrily and asked how many people she thought he had seen of people like her, since he had no interest in her. The woman claimed that this girl deceived him because she came to him for status and wealth. The boy asked in disbelief if she would really be all right with that. She laughed out loud and said that this gray mouse was digging in his dirt, and that she looked very ridiculous. Her fiery speech was interrupted by Karshan's loud laughter, after which she asked what was funny about what she had said. The boy tried to catch his breath quickly to get rid of the annoying woman quickly. He explained that he really wanted Lien to take advantage of his position, because he considered himself necessary, as there were benefits in it. The stranger was embarrassed by such a statement, as she continued to shout that she wholeheartedly wished this girl would take advantage of her position. The boy added that, to his great regret, Lien was not that kind of person, which made her even more attractive. Once calm, he angrily looked at his interlocutor and asked by what right she dared to say such things about his friend. The woman felt a sinister aura emanating from him, but she had no idea what to do in this case. He took care of her quite quickly, so now they could walk calmly down the street. Lien was already ready to return to the hostel, which she informed her companion about. Kaon understood that it was absolutely unnecessary to know the story of that woman, his beloved. Several uneventful weeks passed after Lien's date with Karshan. The aristocratic uncle continued to consult her about his soulmate, as if she were something special to him. The only person who worried her lately was Hans, who still could not get over the refusal. Even after Jane left him, he still tried to meet her. He continued to follow Lien, hoping to carry out at least one plan to meet his friend. At one point, he pretended to feel incredible pain, after which he announced that she had finally noticed him. He explained that working with his father had become a bit difficult, and it was also a hot summer, so he prepared many summer products. But his competitors launched a big new product, which made all his efforts in vain. The girl said that the new cooling ointment would bring only slight relief and would not do anything special. And if you apply it constantly on the skin, it will not benefit anyone. Hans was very surprised by how quickly she analyzed the market and added that this was the essence of trends. He explained that in any case, this was the saddest news right now, and since the situation was still bad, he had to risk his summer business. Suddenly, Lien realized that if she developed a seasonal product, she would instantly solve the problem of independent financing. Behind her, two classmates couldn't understand why all their clothes were stained with sweat. At that very moment, the brilliant idea struck her that she already had the necessary remedy. She said she had a medicine already prepared, but that she needed his help to sell it. The boy explained that he wouldn't be able to do much in terms of promotion or investment, because his business was going very badly, to which she replied that this medicine would sell. Lien assured him that he would only receive a small commission for every medicine sale. Frankly, she didn't understand why she hadn't thought of selling an anti-sweat product sooner. But now she saw it as a great opportunity. The girl reasoned that she needed to do everything right to earn some money and be able to lead an independent life. Her thoughts were interrupted by the approach of Amila, who clearly wanted to tell her something. The girl hesitated for a long time and didn't dare, but soon mustered up the courage and began to say words of gratitude. Lien had already completely forgotten about her because she had prepared the drug a long time ago and given it to her. But she remembered that the talking papa got a rash after using the cream, but the medicine she gave him still helped. Now she says she is very happy that her face is finally all right. Amila practically burst into tears and shouted at the top of her lungs that she was very grateful for her help. Her two friends began to whisper nervously, because all this meant that the girl accepted the commoner as an equal. Lien explained that she didn't need to be paid with food, so a simple smile would be enough. Amila started talking about how she would definitely become her fan starting today. Hans asked if there was really any disagreement between them, to which the girl replied that he should forget about the matter. During club activities, she asked Thomas to simply help her instead of money. She explained that she was going to sell the medicine for hyperhidrosis she had given him, but that she needed hands that could carefully handle the herbs. The boy told her that her problem was practically solved, and that it meant too much to him to simply refuse her deserved payment. The girl said she was only a student, but even if she suddenly had a lot of money, she should have earned more. She decided she needed to learn to earn money gradually, but for that she didn't need his help. Thomas immediately stated that she was not someone he could convince with words, so he would be happy to help her, especially with herbs. The boy assured her that he had learned a lot from his elf mother, which surprised her greatly. He explained that he was only half elf, and the other half was human. The prince said that he doesn't look much like his father, but he inherited his talent as an elementalist from him, so he learns very quickly regarding nature. Lien suddenly understood why he was so angry when she wanted to pick a flower. Because elves loved nature, she assumed she had just overheard one of the secrets of the house of a Bascantis, because it was unlikely that many people knew that the future emperor was half-elf. Karshan suddenly appeared between them again, who immediately interrupted their cute dialogue. The boy explained that he also wanted to help her, and that he would also try to do everything he could. Thomas informed him that medicinal herbs required a subtle and gentle touch. And given his bad temper, Carson was clearly not made for the job. The boy glared at him and said that all he had to show her was his bad temper, but that his touch was none of her business. Lien immediately intervened in their conversation and tactfully separated them in different directions. He explained that the more hands, the better, which is why they need to work together. The girl said she would give them the same amount of tasks to adjust them based on their effectiveness. Carson explained that he is willing to provide her with infinite efficiency because he wants to be the only one, and better for her, so he will do everything in his power. Without a second thought, the Duke's heir decided to get to work and flew out the window. Thomas approached her and said that he apologized in advance, that he had gotten off topic, and that, even though it was so long ago, he needed to say it. The boy started talking about how Carson treats her in a special way, but she abruptly interrupted him and said she understood everything perfectly. Seeing Kaon walk away towards the mountain, Lien said it was very strange that only he found out, because the entire academy knew it. He asked her if everything was really okay with her, because the heaviness in her heart sometimes turns into poison, and the overly large rosebush is always full of thorns. The girl leaned against the windowsill and assured him that she would take care of it, so he shouldn't worry. Thomas said tiredly that in that case, he had no doubt that the one who flew away had already fixed everything. The boy promised her that he would come to see her every day, starting the next day, to help her with her production. She replied that she would also always be in the club, and that it would soon become much noisier. Her conversation was overheard by Fjord, who was slightly annoyed by her answer about Carson. He quietly said that Thomas only discovered his true emotions and immediately hurried to leave, and that he himself would never have been able to do it. The next day, Lien told Hans about her brilliant plan, who immediately supported her. The boy already imagined that the antiperspirant would become the summer hit, and he had a unique opportunity to sell such a valuable product. He was rambling about how, as she said, they needed to target the younger crowd, and he knew the merchant in the academy's shopping street well, so they needed to launch a small batch and see how the market reacted, and then organize a serious business. Hans suggested that it would be a bit expensive, but the final result was within their loss range. And besides, modern buyers prefer scarce goods, so this would not be a problem. And then, he suggested, increasing the price a little more. The girl told him that she didn't understand much about this, so she left him the opportunity to figure it out on his own. The boy happily shouted that he understood business and accounting, so he would show her an excellent result. And when she asked him why he ended up in herbalism, he explained that he initially wanted to go to business school, but his grades didn't allow it. To do this, he informed her that he had heard that all medicines had to be handmade, but he knew that he couldn't help with its production, but he could participate in ingredient collection, to which she replied that she already had quality labor. Lien perfectly understood that the guy would quickly collapse if Carson was next to them. A violent confrontation began between Thomas and Carson in the club room. Kaon said that the enemy had just stolen a plant from him, which means he was going to win through theft. To such an attack, Thomas replied that it wasn't about theft, but about a choice based on work efficiency, because he could do it much faster and therefore should help the enemy do his job. The girl understood that both were incredible workers because they were extremely fast and impeccable. Thomas has been working with plants since childhood, and Carson only watched once how to do it correctly, after which he himself became a professional. Lien quietly apologized to Fjord for making the club room never quiet. The boy replied that everything was fine, but he himself thought that even though his friend was an idiot, she didn't want to get between them yet. Seeing that she had nothing to do, the girl quickly invited him to help her clean the room. Startled, Fjord dropped one of the bottles directly onto the floor, causing it to shatter and scatter in different directions. She wanted to scold him, but at that moment, Carson and Thomas cheerfully shouted that they were already done. While she was dealing with the noisy workers, the guy quickly knelt down to remove the broken bottle. The girl thought they needed to restock supplies because she didn't want to look for the plant too often. Lien asked if she understood correctly that they replenish their club points by killing demons. Upon receiving an affirmative answer, she asked if they had time to complete all the credits for the semester. She suggested that next time, they go monster exterminating together to replenish their supplies of necessary herbs. Hearing this statement, Fjord and Carson stopped what they were doing and stared at her. They unanimously exclaimed that it was a bad idea, because the forest was dangerous, and killing or blowing up demons was not a pleasant sight. The girl tried to explain to them that she managed to kill one small monster. Lien suggested spraying demon spray while harvesting herbs to warn herself, and she can also use poisonous needles, and in general, she is quite strong because she is used to traveling alone. Fjord quickly realized that they had no arguments left against this idea. He explained that their targets are usually not slugs, but dangerous missions that only combat students participate in because they don't know what to expect. The girl said she understood everything, so she would go with them because if they want to return what Fjord just destroyed, they must go to the demon territory. Lien finally convinced them and offered to schedule the next date for the outing. Thomas watched everything that happened in disbelief, realizing that he wouldn't have the strength to convince her. Killing demons sounded very grand, but she had already visited several places to collect herbs, so it turned out to be more of a picnic than a nightmare. Lien always carried poisonous needles with her that easily fought off various monsters. The girl was thinking about what else she should bring besides the usual tools and some emergency supplies. Sitting at her desk, she remembered how once, as a child, she went on a hike with her mother. They often went out to buy herbs, but her father always made a sweet sandwich, and savory with a special sauce. Memories mingled with the aromas and flavors of their forest. That's why she always wanted to know the recipe for this sauce, but her father never gave it to her. One day, she begged a lot, to which he told her that not even her mother knew the secret of the sauce. So if she wanted to eat a delicious sandwich, she would have to look for her dad. Being very young, Lien didn't really understand what her father meant by this exactly. Many years later, she realized that her father wanted, in the smallest things, to be the one who meant something to her mother. Before leaving, she prepared several sandwiches, but they turned out to be too many. She thought that Carson would most likely eat everything with pleasure, even if her food was poisoned. The girl decided that she had worked hard when preparing these sandwiches, so she was sure they would turn out very tasty. In the back of her mind, she imagined the first time Carson would try a sandwich she had made. It seemed to her that he would be incredibly happy to receive them and would thank her as if it were a great gift. Lien assumed that he would definitely like it because her father's recipe was unique, so she had never tried them. She could already imagine with what pleasure he would eat them, hoping that her sandwiches would turn out as good as she imagined. Everyone went to the mountain, which the students called the back mountain because it was at a distance from the city center, and it could only be reached by carriage or horse. There was a rather unique ecosystem on the mountain, as magic in these places is very strong. So this place was dangerous for people due to the large number of demons. So there were two boundaries separating the mountain from the monster habitat. The last time she managed to cross the first border, it wasn't that dangerous because she was prepared beforehand. And minor demons were no different from small animals that could be scared away with sprays, bright lights and loud sounds. But beyond the second border, there were medium-level demons, and high ones that looked like bears and lions, which is why the academy kept this mountain under its control. The first thing she saw when crossing the second border was an enormously sized monster, which Carson finished off with one blow. Fjord reminded her that if the monster froze, it would be simply impossible for someone to extract the core. And when they opened it, there would be blood everywhere. The girl asked if they had really gotten used to this so quickly, because in front of them was a huge monster. Fjord explained that it also took him some time to adapt, but when the monster froze in place, Carson had already killed it without even blinking. He added that this was even more shocking, after which he started training much more often. Carson said he was very surprised by her, because she was going to use the poisonous needle on her belt when the monster approached her. The girl suddenly pulled out a bow, to which Fjord noted that she was truly accustomed to fighting demons. Lien sat down in the clearing and said they only needed to get the core and then report the house results so they could start extracting it. The boy said she didn't have to do it herself because the core was very difficult to find and even harder to obtain. She firmly stated that she didn't know how to fight, so she would try to do it quickly so they could move on. They tried to stop her, saying that if she didn't use the knife correctly, she could hurt herself. The girl asked if they really had any objections to removing the demon's core, because it wasn't the most beautiful sight. Not hearing an answer, she began to do the only job she could do. When an unusually large amount of mana accumulates in one place, it will stop perverting, corrupting, and a creature will be born in it. But at first glance, it might look like an animal, although it was just a cloud of mana moving to draw even more energy into its core. Since demons were like animals, Lien often sympathized with them, but this time there were 3, so they could remove the carcass immediately. After a few moments, she pulled a small stone from the demon's body, spilling its blood everywhere. Fjord said it looked very suspicious, so she should put away the knife and come closer to them. The boy said he was very surprised that she dissected the monster so easily and extracted the core from it. Karshan cheerfully announced that it was extraordinarily beautiful and was amazed on the spot. He immediately ran up to her and asked her to hold out her hand to help her with healing. The girl was surprised that he could repeatedly use spells that most wizards couldn't even dream of. In just a couple of moments, all the blood on her clothes disappeared and she started to feel much better. Looking at her finger, she thought that even the morning ham cut had disappeared early. Fjord angrily said that every time they did the dirty work, he never used this spell, even though they had to get their hands dirty many times to find the demon core. Lien continued searching, and Karshan quickly agreed with her. After a while, they had already collected a large bag of demon stones, so now she offered them a snack. She asked how they managed to have a snack during extermination, to which the guy replied that he didn't eat much because a full stomach took away his strength. In fact, they didn't want to eat together at all and almost always starved. This time, Karshan couldn't leave the girl without lunch, so he prepared a portal in advance to the place for lunch. He cast a warming spell on the food especially for her, so now all that remained was to take the table outside. But Lien interrupted his thoughts, saying that she had prepared sandwiches especially this morning. The portal, located right behind Karshan, closed at lightning speed. Since the boy didn't want to offend her at all, the girl noticed a strange movement in his hands, so she immediately asked him what he had just done, to which he replied that he was just cleaning up the trash. She laughed quietly and said that everything was clear on his face, and then asked him what he was taking with him. The boy was a little disconcerted that she smiled at him so easily, even though he hadn't done anything for it. Lien suggested they eat together because she had brought enough sandwiches. After a while, Fjord and Carson sat on the tablecloth that one of them had brought and looked at the food with embarrassment. The girl explained to them that they could start eating because there was no need to wait for her. Fjord has been silent about the fact that she prepared them herself, so he is a little worried. He looked closely at his friend, who, like him, did not immediately decide to bite into the sandwich. In a moment, both decided to try the cherished food, after which they were indescribably delighted. Lien thought that they always made her too nervous. Fjord started saying that it was incredibly delicious, because he had never tasted such a rich sauce. And spicy. The girl thanked him with relief for the compliment, saying that she had prepared a special sauce that her father had taught her. She looked closely at Karshan, and then asked him if it had turned out delicious. He couldn't part with the sandwich, so he vaguely mumbled that it was delicious. Having finished the first one, he immediately took the second one, saying that she herself had prepared it, and that it was very tasty. Thomas heard Lien's voice not far from him, so he immediately headed towards her camp. The girl offered them to try other dishes, but they flatly refused because they wanted to try as many of her sandwiches as possible. Fjord said he was afraid his friend would eat absolutely everything, but Lien was concerned that someone was moving in the bushes. Suddenly, an incomprehensible creature flew out of them, and meanwhile, she said there was protection around, so there shouldn't be any monsters. Lien explained that the creature looked like a bird, but it wasn't exactly her. The girl suggested that it was a bird that looked like a dog. Or maybe it was a bird dog. She decided to find out more precisely, and quickly headed towards the bushes where she had just seen a strange creature. As she walked through the bushes, she suddenly met Thomas's eyes, who was also among the bushes. Lien was only concerned with one question. Why was he there and nowhere else? Carson immediately started asking angrily if he was stalking them, to which Thomas replied that he had just gone for a walk. The boy asked him if he himself had come from the academy to this place, to which he replied that he simply liked to walk. The prince was interested in the question of why they were sitting in the most dangerous demon habitat, beyond the second border. Khan explained that they were having dinner, to which the newcomer replied that he didn't want to disturb them. Karshan angrily said that they only brought enough dishes for 3, so there was no room for him. The girl suggested he try the sandwich because he could eat it with a napkin, but for that, he needed to wash his hands. In response to his statement that he didn't want to disturb them, Lien explained that he wouldn't interfere, and that there was no need to pay for the food because she herself had prepared it. Thomas immediately agreed to eat it, at the same time retracting his words that he wasn't hungry. She objected that there were quite a few sandwiches, so they could share them with everyone. Carson started giving orders to Thomas, telling him that he should take the smallest sandwich. Lien decided to continue searching for the strange creature, so she could again see something black between the bushes. Kaon was immediately by her side, trying to protect her from whatever was trying to hide in the bushes. There was nothing to stop her, but Fjord shouted at her that if the creature could cross Carson's border, then it was an unusual creature, so she should stay in the camp. The girl quickly arrived at the required spot, after which she told them not to worry. A winged puppy jumped out from among the bushes and immediately began to lick her. She told everyone that she was right, because it is actually a bird dog, although small in size. The three boys were watching how cute she looked, and were also jealous of the puppy in her arms. Thomas reported that he had heard that sometimes beast-like creatures are born without the desire to destroy, but that other creatures are usually quickly killed by other demons. He continued talking about how they were beyond the second border, so she should be careful. The prince said he didn't quite understand, but that unprepared people like Lien shouldn't get into such thickets, because the club's records were full of many of them. He guessed that Carson was simply obsessed with Lien, so he constantly wanted to be near her. The girl interrupted him by saying that she herself insisted on coming to this part of the forest. The prince informed her that she had a surprisingly childish side that he hadn't seen before. Fjord said he wasn't going to question her decision, but he was a little worried. So next time, they would have to find another way to get medicinal herbs. To his question of whether he really didn't manage to convince them, the boy replied that not everyone wanted to take her with them, because every time there is an option with a bad outcome. He added that Carson understood this very well, so he didn't want to take her with me. To which she replied that it was not fair of him at all. Kaon, embarrassed, declared that he understood her self-confidence, but poisonous needles are a short-range weapon, so if you get too close, who will be able to attack her in an instant? The girl did not contradict him and stated that it was actually his mistake, but then she decided to show him her device. She pulled out a needle and said that it was not a rare poison, because anyone in the botany class could make it, but that she was using a particularly deadly one. Carson immediately began to panic, trying to persuade her to put the weapon back in place. Lien asked how long they thought it would take for the substance to take effect, to which Fjord suggested approximately 1 minute. She said that as soon as the poison enters the body, it immediately paralyses the whole body, and this remedy also destroys the creature's mana, so the bigger and powerful the monster, the stronger the effect of her needle, with which she can kill any enemy in 10 minutes. Fjord said he would never have thought that a simple needle would be so effective, and then asked why she didn't want to put something like this up for sale. The girl explained that this poison is only used in the herbalist school, because if used incorrectly, the person himself will not be safe, as the solution is not so easy to remove, and it can be smeared throughout the house. Carson assumed that she was also in danger at that moment, but tried to reassure him by telling him that he had resistance to this poison because he had gradually developed immunity to it. He added that not everyone is able to eliminate a little poison on their own, because its production requires a lot of time and precise dosages, so such a product is not sold on an industrial scale. Lien looked at Carson and asked why he was still nervous, and she thought that at this rate, she wouldn't be able to join the next hunt. Thomas was the first to say that he trusted her completely, because she changed him like no one else. So if the product was made by her personally, then he had absolute confidence in it. The girl was glad that she managed to convince at least one of them not to doubt her. Fjord and Carson immediately realized their mistake, so they stood awkwardly in silence for a while. Kaon explained that he trusted her, but that he didn't know enough about poisons to trust their safety. Lien decided that this was the only issue, and decided to prove her resistance to the rose with a single prick on her finger, while saying that she had already developed enough immunity and that she didn't have an antidote with her. Carson suddenly appeared in front of her and covered her hand with his. The deadly needle pricked him, after which a drop of blood immediately spurted from his arm. Carson only had time to ask her if she was hurt, after which he began to fall on top of her. The girl tried to catch him, and all the other participants in the hike immediately ran towards them. In a couple of moments, she was running through the forest, breaking all the branches in her path. As soon as he injected him, he immediately tried to shout at him, while the others, meanwhile, they tried to find an antidote. The sharp branches left deep cuts on Lien's skin, but she didn't notice them at all. Thomas immediately decided to move Karshan to the academy, because he knew that the antidote alone would not be enough. Recalling all this, she continued to run through the forest, stumbling over roots that suddenly emerged from the ground. The puppy also watched, as she spoke hastily about how, when she reached the academy, she would immediately start working on the antidote. The girl completely blamed herself, because she knew very well how much he cared about her. Holding the bruised area, Lien continued running towards the academy, realizing that she had committed an imprudent act. The next time she hesitated, Fjord caught her and asked her to calm down. The boy explained that they would soon reach the road, where the carriage they arrived in was already waiting for them, so he would help her get there. The girl sincerely thanked him, thinking that she really shouldn't have blamed herself. She understood that she needed to return to the academy as soon as possible and think about the sequence of actions to create an antidote, because they couldn't waste a second. Fjord cut the horse's reins, after which he took the girl and sat straight on the horse. He shouted to the coachman that he would borrow his horse for a while because the matter was urgent. Lien only thought that Karshan had to be safe under the supervision of nurses. Fjord realized with horror that his heart was occupied only by Karshan, and that there would never be a place in it for him. Kaon woke up some time later in the first aid station, trying to find out if he survived. Or not. He remembered that he had been pricked with a poisonous needle, after which his body instantly froze. Turning around, he tried to figure out who had brought him to the academy and whether Lien was worried about him. The boy suggested that she probably even cried, and he didn't want that at all, but he would be happy if she cried because she was worried about him. Suddenly, a girl ran into the room, so he immediately sat up on the bed. After a while, she carefully examined him and was surprised to see that he was all covered in scratches. He looked into her eyes with horror and realized that she was very worried about his condition. Karshan jumped out of bed and ran to her, asking how she could hurt herself like this, and then offered to heal her. Lien tried to hold back tears, so she didn't answer his questions for a while. Gathering her will into a fist, she began to ask why he was only interested in his pain and didn't think about her wounds. The girl loudly and angrily declared that he was a complete fool for doing this to himself. Tears sprang from her eyes, but she continued to ask him why he only thought of her, because she was very scared when he fell. Lien sobbed and repeated that he could have really died if they had arrived even a minute late. She perfectly understood that he was not to blame for anything, but at the same time, she could not help but be grateful that he was alive. The girl looked at him and thought that she was very afraid that something might happen to him. Even now, when she knew he was fine, her hands wouldn't stop shaking, and fear seized her chest. Lien never wanted to lose her loved ones again, but then her thoughts were interrupted by the gentle touch of his warm hands. She realized that she had gotten lost in her own thoughts, but now he was by her side. The boy apologized and said that his body acted on its own because he thought she was in danger. He explained that he would do the same if he had to go back to that moment again, because he didn't want her to get hurt. Lien loudly complained about him again, declaring that he had no right to do this to himself. She said that if he was going to do this again, he should find a safer way because he was the best mage in the academy. The girl continued saying that he could save her, heal her, but not do it to his own detriment, so he shouldn't say that he was ready to repeat his act again. The boy tried to calm her down and told her that he would do things a little differently so as not to hurt them. Lien couldn't take it anymore and ran into his arms, which is why she couldn't stand up. When they fell onto the hospital bed, the girl realized that everything was predetermined from the beginning, because only he spoke to her like that. Getting closer to his chest, she remembered all the gifts he constantly brought her. Karshan apologized to her in a trembling voice and told her that he would never make her worry again, and thought that she couldn't help but fall in love with him. The boy finally healed her, because he couldn't look at all the scratches she got while running to his infirmary. It was awkward for them to be together after they succumbed to tender feelings and practically opened up to each other. Lien was the first to break the awkward silence, apologizing for what happened in the forest. She believed that everything happened because of her, because she was resistant to poison, but he behaved too hastily. The boy began to say that he was only rude to her because he liked her, which meant it was her fault. The girl nervously rubbed her neck, where until recently there was a huge scar. Suddenly, Lien decided to ask him why he liked her so much, which took the boy by surprise. She assumed that he fell in love with her because she had done a lot for him, but she herself understood that he was a noble man, and that a girl like her would never appear before his eyes. He said he had no good reason for her to fall in love with him, but that he really liked the way she laughed, the way she joked, and the way she looked at him. Karshan said he loved the way her eyes lit up when she talked about herbs, and her courage when she does something reckless. The Duke's heir explained that he liked her confident gait and the fact that she always knew where she had to go. So when he woke up, he realized that he had fallen unbearably in love with her. He added that he was well aware that he was unjustifiably attached to her, and that was why he apologized to her. Lien listened to him attentively, not knowing how to respond to such a sincere declaration of love. She was simply happy for him, because she also loved his unconditional affection for her, but she couldn't say how she felt at that moment. The boy said that he was very happy that she thought highly of him, but that he was also trying to look better in her eyes, because there were things he didn't want to show her. Carson asked her if she had heard rumors that he was cruel and didn't care about the rest of the world. The girl didn't understand why he was so worried about the rumors he heard. The boy looked quite worried and nervous, so she decided to cheer him up by telling him that it was a bit inappropriate to talk about his treatment of other people, because she knew that he was especially kind to her. Lien asked him to stop talking badly about himself, because no one can treat everyone exactly the same. She explained that it is completely natural to want to be kinder to someone you like. The girl said that she was not going to talk about what he wanted to hide from her, but would judge him only by his own actions and words. Lien advised him not to pay attention to what others said about him, because it overshadowed his beautiful face. Karshan looked away from her embarrassed, trying to contain the crazy pounding of his heart. At the same time, the butler approached Karshan's mother and told her that her son was back to normal. Sylvia said she heard something bad happen to her son, but she thought he destroyed a building or grabbed a person. When she heard about the poisoning, she practically fainted, but barely restrained herself from running to him. The woman suggested that her only son was too much like his reckless father. Karshan was not a child who suddenly appeared in the world, because everything started long before that. Once, she was a student at the academy who enjoyed the carefree days of her youth. She had easy classes, strong friendships, no obstacles in the way, so everything in her life went as usual. The monotonous life bored her incredibly, so she was looking for that very handsome man she could fall madly in love with. It was at that moment that he appeared, whose face was truly the best incentive for her. Sylvia immediately decided that the boy was quite cute, which meant she should flirt with him. It started with appearance, but the real problem arose when the seduction succeeded. It turned out that he is the same scoundrel who organizes acts of vandalism at the academy and beats everyone and also gets in everyone's way. The girl tried to leave him alone as soon as she found out that he was chasing after her like a naughty puppy. But she had no choice but to take responsibility for him until the end. It took her an eternity to control Lien, but she never thought her son would be so much like his father. In her opinion, it wasn't even about something similar, but about something completely different. A few days ago, she called Carson to the principal's office to ask him about the rumors that he had fallen in love with one of the students. Kaon firmly answered in the affirmative, but then asked who the girl was. Speaking of her, the boy smiled constantly and could not hide his admiration for her. His story lasted more than an hour, and he mainly talked about how charming she was. Sylvia immediately realized that her son was as affectionate and caring as his father. The principal believed that his beloved had something to do with the poisoning, since from childhood, Karshan learned that everything that happens in life is urgent, so he was constantly on guard. His mother independently taught him not to do anything that deserves offense from other people, which means he must resolve it before taking revenge. Then she taught him that it is not good to solve problems using only force, because logic is also needed for that. She was always worried about whether one day he could find a normal relationship in this world. Standing by the window, she reasoned that because he controlled himself, he hadn't gotten into trouble yet. The woman feared that he might be hiding something bad, which meant that both of them could hurt each other. Sylvia never wanted to be a mother who interfered in her son's personal life. Well, she had a certain responsibility towards him, so she couldn't leave everything alone. She knew that if something went wrong, at least 2 people would be hurt, which meant she would have to intervene anyway. The woman sincerely hoped that Lien would make the right decision before she had to intervene. A few days later, they were already able to have lunch together, so Fjord said that since he recovered, It means Lien's antidote worked as best as possible. She mockingly announced that their first demon slaying together was over. But instead of ending on a bad note, she suggested finishing the outing by eating sandwiches. The girl said that Thomas also contributed, so she invited him. Carson cheerfully announced that he was willing to make any sacrifice just to try her sandwich one more time. Fjord also stated that he had never tasted anything like it, so he wouldn't mind having another one. The imperial prince lived there and said the taste seemed quite normal to him. Suddenly, he realized that he had just said something stupid, so he immediately covered his mouth with his hand, hoping they hadn't heard those words. Kaon asked how he dared to call Lien's sandwiches ordinary and why he didn't watch his language. The girl immediately stopped them, saying that for her, this taste is associated with family, to which she pointed out that in this case, she could not eat something so important to her. Fjord and Carson criticized Thomas for a long time, and she kept wondering if her picnic idea was a success. Hans found her in the hallway and wondered why she wasn't answering his questions. He asked her if she had secretly called him, but now she was loudly telling them about the business model of antiperspirant. When she asked him if he had overreacted to this, the boy confidently assured her that he was fine. Hans suggested that she didn't quite understand the situation because he was referring to the greatest success. He said she exceeded his expectations, so he goes crazy trying to save everything. But sometimes, this requires paying many times more than planned. And if anyone finds out that she is the one preparing the potion, then they can come after her. The whole school will come. The girl suggested that in this case, it would be worth simply increasing the amount of products produced. The boy explained that the amount would still be limited, because cooking a few more pieces would not correct the situation. Lien explained that she could do whatever she thought best, because she didn't understand this at all. He asked why she didn't seem insecure, because if her company took off, she should be nervous about the fact that it was her creation. She stated that she didn't have a very good sense of reality, but since he told her the cost of the goods without hiding anything, she could trust him. The girl said she had no one else to ask for help with sales except him. Lien asked if he minded her calling her friend for a second, to which he replied that they were already done talking. A couple of moments later, a puppy nearby was already flying towards her, happily wagging its tail. The girl skillfully caught it, and Hans cautiously began to ask her if there was a demon in her hands. He added that he had no idea she was so unusual, but she tried to calm him down, telling him that this demon would not harm her. She explained that she once fed it, and since then the puppy has followed her everywhere. But if it were a real demon, it couldn't go abroad. She didn't answer the rest of his questions, so he was again surprised that she didn't know anything about it. Lien suggested that it had gained a little weight since the last time, and the boy realized that she was truly defenseless. Suddenly, the puppy noticed a stranger next to its owner and began to growl aggressively at him. Hans asked if her dog ignored the people around her a bit. He explained that the person next to her is very weak and this is normal, but if another person attacks him, the guy will be destroyed. He asked if its name was really Bird Dog and if animals had never been given names before. The girl asked him if he really wanted to tell her that she shouldn't give the puppy a nickname. She said she called him exactly what he really was, but now she needed to give him a proper name. After thinking for a while, she named him Timmy, considering that this name suited him better. When Hans asked what that name meant, the girl admitted that she just looked up at the sky, and that this name was the first one that came to mind. The guy took a deep breath and stated that it was still much better than Bird Dog. At the same time, at the academy, one of the students was trembling with fear in the translucent hallway. Another approached him saying that he had arrived on time at the meeting place. The trembling man asked him if he had brought what he needed, to which he replied that the money was up front. Having received the coveted coins, the boy smiled smugly and said that this was the right price for the goods. He carefully counted all the coins and stated that he had given him a little more than the market value of the drug. The guy asked him to quickly hand over the necessary medicine, after which the merchant began to take out a vial of the medicine. He held in his hand an antiperspirant prepared by Lien herself, but very few people really knew who the supplier was. Having received the precious potion, the boy happily talked about the fact that he finally had it in his hands. Autumn had arrived, and in one of the academy parks, a girl was sitting carefully cleaning her ring. High school students passed by her and mockingly said that she had been doing this all day for many years. One of them suggested that she was possessed, so he wanted the other to buy her a new ring. Suddenly, Lien intervened in their conversation and asked them if she really looked so strange. She stated that a person has the right to do what is truly important to them, regardless of the opinions of others. The girl was confused because she saw the famous Lien in front of her for the first time. Lien said that they themselves do not understand what is causing her harm and said that she is acting strangely. The two boys immediately decided to withdraw, but one of them was still indignant that nothing bad had been said. The girl got up from the bench and thanked the savior for her help, to which she replied that they were annoying her, so she decided to get rid of them. The unknown girl silently examined her from head to toe for some time, but finally introduced herself as Nancy. She explained that the ring was the last gift from her grandmother, so she wants to wear it forever. So she tries to be as careful as possible with it so as not to lose it. Nancy said that her hands were constantly sweating, so she wiped the ring every time she thought about it. The girl said she heard that there is some kind of antiperspirant that is very hard to find, so now she has to clean her ring every day. She added that her new acquaintance probably found her strange, but she couldn't help it. Lien quickly stopped her torment, saying there was no need to explain herself. The girl quickly said goodbye to her new friend, wishing her a good day. Nancy still couldn't believe she was talking to the famous Lien for the first time. She went for a walk in the garden, thinking that her savior seemed very cold and wouldn't talk to girls like her. Suddenly, Nancy noticed that she was starting to sweat again, so she decided to wipe the ring again. Lien became the most famous person in the entire academy due to her outstanding achievements. She first became famous as a student who passed the infamous translation exam with nearly perfect scores. Nancy believed she must be a genius because basically everyone did what they did thanks to their parents. When a celebrity walked down the hall, everyone around her began to make way for her. There was always an exorbitant coldness in her gaze, indicating that you shouldn't get close to her. Then she became famous for organizing a student purge, transferring because the noble students who bullied her were immediately expelled with all the resulting consequences. Many whispered that this happened only once in the entire history of the academy, because usually aristocrats did not touch each other. Others believed that the girl could defend herself even in such a difficult situation. Nancy saw Lien frequently, but never noticed her talking to anyone. The girl heard talk that the terrible and ruthless Karshan was fond of the star. Some suggested their relationship was one-sided, while others believed they were dating. Nancy couldn't believe that she was so cold and distant, yet still managed to capture someone's heart. As if adding fuel to the fire, information appeared in the city that Lien was being pursued by the prince of the Abascan Empire. And sometimes, there were even suggestions that she was actually a princess from a distant kingdom. The girl believed that Lien was the only heir. The bastards threatened her life. As rumors had it, she fled to the academy due to expulsion. But after talking to her, she believed it was all fiction. Nancy thought her idol was truly an amazing and warm person. She looked down at the vial on the floor, whereupon she realized with horror that it was antiperspirant. The girl assumed something happened to her, and someone lost it right in front of her dorm room. Upon picking up the bottle from the floor, she noticed a label with her name written on it. Nancy screamed that she had no idea who could have left it at her door. Entering the room, she saw her neighbor, who immediately began to ask her what happened. Seeing a vial of antiperspirant in her hands, the girl went crazy because it was a very rare product. The girl asked where she got it from, to which Nancy replied that everything happened unexpectedly. Her roommate suggested she had chosen a dark path, but warned her that the administration had begun increasing surveillance of the black market. Nancy was still trying to figure out who the person was who gave her this gift from the gods. My roommate asked if she had heard rumors about who manufactured the antiperspirant. The girl suggested that the supplier was the famous Lien, who lives a couple of rooms away from them. She reasoned that someone had overheard her talking about the antiperspirant before it even hit the market. Now everything clicked in Nancy's head, because she had literally told her problem. After which, the girl decided to give her a gift. With the prized bottle in her hands, Nancy didn't understand what she should do with so much wealth. After a while, she headed to the office where Lien's fan circle met. Mila told Nancy that she didn't understand at all why the girl suddenly wanted to join them. She wondered if she knew what they were going to do to Lien, but warned that everything should happen quietly. The leader said that the girl under no circumstances should find out what they were planning. Nancy furiously said that she also wanted to be part of this. Amila squeezed her hand tightly and said that now they could start the reconstruction plan together. Many things happened without Lien knowing, so she often felt out of place. Many began to whisper that the creator of the antiperspirant was a student at the academy, and not a person from the great pharmaceutical guild. Others assumed that the rumors were true, and that it was Lien who became the inventor of the miracle cure. Karshan began to worry constantly that the girl had become too popular in the academy. He informed her that there were rumors that she was the creator of the antiperspirant. The girl said she didn't understand at all why he was so worried, to which the boy replied that the entire academy was asking her for help. Kaon pointed in the direction of Fjord and Thomas and stated that even they came to her, to which the boys replied that they were also members of the club. Lien said she didn't feel any difference at all, so he shouldn't worry. Unfortunately for her, Carson had become twice as handsome since he realized he liked her. The girl began to notice the beauty of his face, his facial expressions, body language, and voice, as he did absolutely everything possible to attract her attention. But when he stared intensely into her eyes with such sensuality and tenderness, she was surprised, thinking she absolutely didn't want to take her eyes off him. In those moments, her heart began to beat fast, and she started to feel like she was absolutely on fire. Lien didn't want him to be able to read her thoughts, but she still didn't know what to do next. Thomas asked if Carson should keep quiet so the girl could rest, to which she replied that she found peace just by looking at his face. And the boy interrupted the relaxation with his voice. Suddenly, Hans burst into the room shouting that he urgently needed to talk to Lien. The three boys in the club room stared at him, causing a heavy aura to surround him. The newcomer suddenly imagined that very soon he would have to go to his grandfather's ex-wife, who had recently passed away. He tried to tell the girl that he had come to talk to her, to which Karshan suggested that the boy considered that place public. But that was not the case at all. Lien asked the three of them to stop scaring her guest, telling them he wasn't doing anything wrong. The girl remembered with horror that Karshan had done the same thing to Hans once when they were working on a group project. But now she started to understand it much better. She realized she was seeing something she hadn't noticed at all before. And Kaon, meanwhile, assured her that he would never spill blood in front of her eyes. This wording made her think that perhaps he was capable of spilling blood behind her back. She couldn't help it, so she tried to check Karshan's behavior every time. And even now he said that lately he really likes good boys. The girl informed Hans that she had simply stated it as a fact and that he should not take it seriously. Thomas immediately approached her and told her that he would always remember this and would try to carry this knowledge throughout his life. The prince immediately pulled out a small notebook and began to write down her words that she liked good boys. Realizing this, Karshan immediately conjured magic and set fire to the written words. Screams. The tension rose between them again, because neither wanted to hand over the precious document to the other. The girl, meanwhile, was indignant because this had been going on for quite some time. And then she said she would be back soon, because nothing should happen if she just talked to him. Upon leaving through the door, she immediately asked what happened, to which Hans took some time trying to organize his thoughts. Gathering courage, he asked her if she really didn't want to mass-produce antiperspirants. The girl assured him that those volumes were enough, because they were a little tired of constantly producing the same product. Hans said he was very grateful to her for bringing his business back to life, but that the blood of a merchant boiled in his veins. He spoke of how this was the best product of its time, which was already having a big impact on the cosmetics market, and that the advertising power of rumors and word of mouth was unparalleled, so he couldn't let his product go to waste. The boy also said he had one last proposal for her, which she hadn't heard of yet. He begged her to share her recipe with him so that he would take care of everything related to production, distribution, and sales, and she only had to sit back and enjoy the money. It seemed like a lifetime of work to her, but usually only scammers promised easy money. Hans tried to prove to her that all this only meant that this recipe was very important to them, because even if he made a similar product and sold it, it would still be a substitute product. He added that he only offered it now because their sales were large enough to prove it, and thanks to his technology, he could make her that offer. The boy started writing a number on a piece of paper, saying that this was the estimated monthly income she could receive from his lucrative offer. Upon seeing the astronomical numbers, Lien tried to offload her brain for a while. It is too much money for her to give up so easily, so she immediately told him to bring her the contract. During this time in the club, Fjord continued reading his book, but he also watched the remaining club members. As soon as the girl left, one of them also had to leave the room, but they couldn't decide exactly who it would be. Karshan thought about how she had told him that her wish was to stop the fight between them, because it was the right thing to do. The boy said he wanted to enjoy Lien's tenderness, but a creepy guy was bothering him, to which Thomas replied that if people standing in one place bothered him, he couldn't do anything about it. Kaon said that the enemy intended to return the favor with a favor, which meant that was a good reason to stay close to her. He asked if he could pay for that service, only if he became her slave. Thomas said he didn't want to know anything about it, unless the girl asked him to leave first. Carson looked at him angrily and asked why he decided he needed his answer. The prince realized that this guy was willing to insult or hurt him because he didn't care that it could lead to war, which means he was really angry. He believed that the girl was completely unaware of the true nature of this person. One day, she told him that she would handle it alone, and since he was her savior, he couldn't let her go. Thomas decided that, if necessary, he would definitely intervene to protect her.